At first, I thought Ethan had stopped breathing. His hand was spread over mine, both of us resting against the small curve of my stomach, while the Kentucky evening hummed around us. The porch boards were warm beneath my bare feet. Somewhere beyond Grandma's fence, cicadas scraped their summer song through the trees, and the last of the sun sat low over the pasture like a yoke cracked open. Ethan had gone still in that way wolves did when the world gave them a sound no human ear could catch. I looked down at him. He was kneeling in front of my chair, one hand on my stomach, the other braced against the porch railing. His dark head was bowed, and for a second all I could see was the sharp line of his shoulders and the careful strength he was trying so hard to soften for me. "Ethan," I asked. He did not answer right away. The bond between us trembled. Not with fear, with wonder. "Ethan," I said again, quieter this time. "You're scaring me." That brought his eyes up to mine. They were not fully human. Gold moved through the brown like sunlight under water. "There are two," he said. I stared at him. "What?" His throat worked. He pressed his palm a little more firmly against my stomach, then stopped as if even that was too much without asking. "May I?" Even now, with shock standing between us, he remembered. My chest tightened. "Yes," I whispered. He lowered his ear to my stomach. Grandma stopped rocking in her chair. The whole porch seemed to hold its breath. Ethan closed his eyes. Then he laughed. It was not a big sound. It broke out of him like it had slipped past all his discipline, rough and disbelieving. He lifted his head, and there was something on his face I had never seen there before. Not Alpha, not Soldier. Not the man who carried an estate full of frightened children on his back. Just Ethan. Terrified and happy. "There are 2 heartbeats," he said. 2. My hand flew to my mouth. For a moment, I did not know whether to laugh or cry, so my body chose both. A shaky sound left me. Half sob, half breathless laugh. The porch tilted under me, or maybe that was just my heart trying to make room for the impossible. "One baby already felt like the Lord had handed me a lit candle in a dry barn," I said, voice trembling. "Now there are 2? Grandma made a sound from her chair. "Lord have mercy." I looked at her. "That better be a blessing and not a warning." "With this family?" she said, though her eyes had gone shiny. "It can be both." Ethan rose slowly. He looked like a man approaching a wild animal, except the wild thing was his own happiness. He reached for me, then stopped. "Can I hold you?" My answer came out wet and immediate. "You better." He gathered me carefully, as if I had become something precious and breakable overnight, which annoyed me even while it made my heart ache. I pressed my face into his shirt and breathed him in. Cedar, rain, and the faint, iron-warm scent of wolf beneath his skin. His arms tightened around me. "2," he whispered into my hair. The word moved through him, through me, through the bond. 2. 2 children. 2 lives beneath my ribs. 2 little heartbeats that Ethan could hear before I could feel them. I should have been afraid. Part of me was. A sharp, honest part of me knew the world did not treat rare things kindly. Not human women who mated wolf alphas. Not children born from old blood and old promises. Not peace when men with power could smell it. But for that one moment, I let myself rest against my mate on my grandmother's porch and feel joy without apologizing for it. Grandma wiped beneath one eye with the corner of her apron. "Well," she said, voice thick, "I suppose I better make more biscuits in the morning." I pulled back and looked at her. "That is your response? You're carrying twins, baby. You'll understand soon enough. Food is not a response. Food is survival." Ethan, still holding me, glanced toward her with grave seriousness. "I'll buy flour." Grandma looked him over. "You'll buy the mill if she asks." "I would," he said. I laughed again, softer this time, but the sound faded when I noticed Grandma's face. She was smiling, but behind it, something old and tired watched me. Something afraid. By morning, I woke hungry enough to resent everybody who had ever eaten before me. Ethan was already awake beside me in the narrow guest bed, one arm tucked beneath his head, the other resting carefully above the blanket near my waist. Not touching, waiting. I opened one eye. "If you say good morning before I eat, I may become violent." His mouth twitched. "Noted. The babies want biscuits." "The babies told you that?" "Yes." "Both of them? One wants biscuits, the other wants fried apples." "That sounds suspiciously like their mother." I turned my head and gave him a look. "Their mother is growing your children from scratch. Their mother can eat whatever the hell she wants." His smile softened, and that was worse than teasing. Tender Ethan was dangerous. Tender Ethan made me forget all the reasons I had once promised myself I would not fall into a man and lose the shape of myself. He leaned in, slow enough for me to stop him if I wanted, and kissed my forehead. "You can have anything you want," he said. I should have said something smart, something sharp. Instead, I closed my eyes for half a second and let his mouth rest there. Downstairs, Grandma had already filled the kitchen with the smell of butter, coffee, and fried apples. I ate 2 biscuits before Ethan finished his first cup of coffee. Then I ate eggs, half a plate of potatoes, and 3 slices of bacon, while Grandma watched me with satisfaction. Ethan watched too, but with the reverence of a man witnessing a holy event. I pointed my fork at him. "Keep staring, Woods, and I'll stab your hand." He lowered his eyes to his plate. "Yes, ma'am." Grandma snorted into her coffee. For a while, it almost felt normal. Almost. Then Grandma washed the same plate 3 times. I noticed because I had grown up in that kitchen. I knew the rhythm of her hands. Grandma did not waste motion. She did not fidget. She did not scrub clean plates while staring at the sink like it had opened into a grave. Ethan noticed too. The bond shifted with his quiet attention. I set my fork down. "Grandma." She kept washing. "Eleanor," I said. That got her. She looked over her shoulder. I rarely called her by her name. When I did, it meant I was not asking as the child she had raised. I was asking as the woman she had made. Her shoulders sank a fraction. "There are things you need to know," she said. The fried apples turned heavy in my stomach. Ethan pushed back from the table, but Grandma lifted a hand. "No, she needs to see it first." "See what?" I asked. Grandma dried her hands slowly on a dish towel. Her fingers were knotted with age, but they were steady now. Whatever fear had taken her at the sink, she had folded it away. "Come on," she said. "Upstairs." My childhood bedroom was smaller than I remembered. Maybe rooms shrink when you leave them. Maybe life gets too big to fit back inside the places that once held you. The yellow-flowered wallpaper had faded at the seams. My old quilt was still folded at the end of the bed. A tiny scratch remained near the doorframe from the year I had tried to measure myself every Sunday after church, convinced I could grow faster if I kept checking. Ethan stood near the doorway, too large and too quiet for that little room. Grandma crossed to the bed and lowered herself with a soft grunt. "Help me move this." Ethan stepped forward immediately. Together they shifted the bed just enough for Grandma to kneel beside the floorboards. She ran her fingers along the wood, found a seam I had never noticed, and pressed. A board lifted. I stared. "You hid something under my bed?" "I hid many things under your bed," Grandma said. "You just weren't nosy enough." "That is a lie, and an insult. I was incredibly nosy." "You were selective." From beneath the floor, she pulled out a narrow wooden box darkened with age. Dust clung to the lid. A small crescent moon had been carved into the top, and beneath it, a well. My breath caught. The same symbol had appeared in dreams since my bond with Ethan opened. A moon over dark water. A circle that was not empty, but waiting. Grandma set the box on the quilt. "Wells women," she said quietly, "were known before they were hidden." I sat beside her. Known by who? Wolves, packs, alphas who remembered gratitude before power ruined their manners. Her mouth tightened. Councilmen, eventually. Ethan's expression darkened at the word. Grandma opened the box. Inside were letters tied with ribbon. Old photographs, a tarnished silver charm, and folded papers covered in names. I touched the charm first. It was cool against my palm, the crescent and well worked into the metal with careful hands. "What are we?" I asked. Grandma looked at me for a long moment. "Not witches," she said. "Not wolves. Not like them. We don't shift. We don't command the moon." Her voice lowered. "We make sanctuary." The word moved through the room like a match struck in darkness. I thought of Vanguard's children pressing close to me before they knew my name. I thought of little Anna's fear pulling through my bones. I thought of Ethan's wounds closing after years of refusing to heal. Grandma nodded as if she could see each memory crossing my face. "Wells women can calm what is frightened, shield what is innocent, strengthen bonds that were broken. That gift is not a weapon, Alma, but dangerous people have always tried to use it like one." My fingers curled around the charm. "And Mama?" Grandma's face changed. There it was again. That closed door. "Your mother had it," she said. "Had it how?" "Strong." The single word fell between us. Ethan came closer, his presence warm at my back. "Is that why my wolf healed when Alma came to Vanguard?" Grandma did not look at him. "Partly," I turned. "Partly?" Her jaw tightened. "There are old ties between Wells blood and certain alpha lines. Promises, debts, broken things." "I am not medicine," I said, sharper than I meant to. Ethan's gaze came to mine immediately. "No, you are not." Something in my chest eased at the speed of his answer. He did not explain, did not defend, did not reach for some alpha right to define me. He only said, "You are Alma. My mate, yes. The mother of my children, yes. But yours before anything else." The room went soft around the edges for one dangerous second. Then Grandma shifted the papers. A folded letter slid loose from the bottom of the box. I knew the handwriting before anyone said a word. My mother had left so little behind. A recipe card for peach cobbler. Her name in an old church Bible. One note Grandma had saved, folded between pages of Psalms. But I knew the slant of her letters, the way her L curved like a loop of thread. My hands shook as I picked it up. "Alma," Grandma said. I looked at her. Her face had gone still. Too still. "What?" "Maybe not that one first." That was the wrong thing to say to me. I unfolded it. The paper smelled like dust and old smoke. Only a few lines filled the page. "Eleanor, if you are reading this, she has found us." My heartbeat moved up into my throat. "Take Alma. Hide her where no council law can reach. Do not trust badges, promises, or wolves calling themselves lawful." I swallowed hard and kept reading. Then the next line opened under my eyes. "If Jessica Woods comes, run." The room went silent. Ethan stopped breathing again. I lifted my head slowly. Who is Jessica Woods? Grandma reached for the letter, but I pulled it back. "No," I said. "Don't." Ethan's voice came from behind me, rough and low. "Alma." I turned. The look on his face made the floor seem unsteady beneath my feet. He stared at the paper in my hand as if it had grown teeth. "Jessica Woods," he said, each word scraped raw, "is my mother." The name sat in the room like a living thing. Jessica Woods. My mother's handwriting had warned us about her. Ethan's voice had claimed her. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The old house creaked around us, one of those familiar Kentucky sounds I had known all my life. But now even that seemed different. The floorboards beneath my feet had been hiding secrets. The walls had listened to my grandmother lie by omission for 24 years. I looked at Ethan first because I needed to know if he was lying. He was not. His face had gone hard in that frightening, empty way grief sometimes wears a mask of discipline. His eyes were fixed on the letter in my hand, but he was not really seeing paper. He was somewhere else. "Your mother," I said. His jaw flexed. "Yes." Grandma reached for the edge of the bed and sat down like her knees had forgotten their purpose. I folded the letter carefully, though my fingers wanted to crumple it. "You told me your mother was dead." "I thought she was." Ethan's voice sounded scraped raw. "That is what I was told." "By who?" "My father." The room tightened. Grandma looked toward the window. Not at me, not at Ethan. Toward the yard, where the afternoon sun touched the grass and the hens scratched near the fence like the world had not just split open. I watched her avoid my eyes and felt something sharp turn inside my chest. "Grandma," I said. She closed her eyes. "No," I told her softly. "Don't you close your eyes like that. Not right now." Ethan shifted beside me. "Alma." "I'm not yelling," I said, though my voice was shaking. "I am asking." He went still. Good. I loved that man, but I did not need him stepping between me and the woman who raised me. Not when my mother's ghost was standing in the room with us. I held up the letter. "My mama wrote your mother's name like a death sentence. I need somebody to explain why." Ethan stared at the floor. His shoulders rose with one slow breath. "I don't know why she would have known your mother," he said. "But I remember Jessica leaving." The way he said the name made it sound foreign in his mouth. Not mother, not mama. Jessica. I waited. He dragged one hand down his beard, then looked toward the open box on my old quilt. I was young, 7, maybe 8, old enough to know adults were lying, not old enough to make them stop. A bitter little smile touched his mouth and vanished. She used to leave at night. My father said it was council business. She had been one of their field agents before she mated him. "Field agent," I repeated. "Enforcer," Grandma said quietly. Ethan looked at her then. She still would not look at either of us. His voice dropped. "You knew that?" "I knew some things." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. That seems to be the theme of the day. Grandma flinched. I hated that it hurt me to see it. Ethan went on, carefully now, like every memory was a shard of glass he had to pick up, barehanded. "One night I woke up because they were arguing downstairs. My father was furious. I heard my mother say the council had ordered it. I didn't know what it was. When she came upstairs, there was blood on her sleeve. My fingers tightened around the folded letter. Ethan's eyes found mine. "I asked if she was hurt," he said. "She told me no. Then she touched my face and told me to be a good son." His mouth twisted. The next morning she was gone. The room seemed colder. "What did your father say?" I asked. "That she died on the eastern border." "But you didn't believe him?" "No." Ethan looked toward the window now too, as if the past had walked into the yard. A week later I found him burning papers in his study. Letters. Council seals. A photograph of her. His voice lowered. When I asked, he told me never to speak her name again. Grandma's hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles looked strained beneath her brown skin. I stared at her hands because if I looked at her face, I might say something I could not pull back. "My mother died around then," I said. Grandma's mouth trembled. "Didn't she?" Silence. It was not empty silence. It was packed full, crowded with every bedtime story that skipped over my mother's death. Every careful answer. Every time Grandma had said, "Some pain don't need digging up, baby." I stood slowly. The room felt too small, too yellow, too full of dust and old fear. "Alma," Grandma whispered. "No, downstairs." I picked up the box before she could stop me. "We are not doing this in my childhood bedroom, where you hid the truth under the damn floor." Ethan moved toward me. "Let me carry that. I've got it." He stopped immediately. That should have softened me. Maybe later it would. Right then, I was too full of questions to have room for tenderness. Downstairs, Grandma made tea because Southern women could be standing in the middle of a house fire and still believe a kettle might help. The cups rattled when she set them down. I did not sit. Ethan did, but only because he looked like his legs needed something solid beneath him. He kept his eyes on me, watching without crowding. I could feel his worry brushing the bond, careful as fingertips against a bruise. I ignored it for the moment. "What happened to my mother?" I asked. Grandma wrapped both hands around her cup. "Lydia died because wolves came too close to Wells' blood." "That is not an answer," I said. "That is a curtain." Her eyes lifted to mine. There she was, my grandmother, Eleanor Wells, the woman who taught me how to braid my hair with patience, how to make soup stretch 3 days, how to hold my head up in rooms where people expected me to shrink. She had loved me. She had saved me. I knew that down to my bones. But love did not make a lie holy. "You want plain words?" she asked. "I deserve plain words. You were a baby. Your mama was dead. The council was looking. Wolves were sniffing around this county like hounds after blood. I had one child in the ground, and one grandchild in my arms." Her voice cracked, then hardened. "I kept you alive, Alma. Don't ask me to be sorry for that." "I'm not asking you to be sorry for keeping me alive." "Then what?" "I'm asking why you let me grow up, not knowing what wanted me dead." Her face crumpled for half a second before she gathered it back. "That knowledge would have chained you to fear." "No," I said, quieter now. "Not knowing chained me to everybody else's choices." Ethan inhaled sharply. Grandma looked away. The kitchen clock ticked above the stove. Outside, a rooster crowed late and ridiculous, like even he had poor timing. I pressed one hand to my stomach. The twins were too small for me to feel yet, but I held them anyway. Some instinct had already begun waking in me, some fierce little flame that made every secret feel like a threat. "If my mother wrote Jessica Woods was coming," I said, "and Jessica did something. Or she was about to." Grandma's lips parted. Before she could answer, Ethan's phone buzzed. Nobody moved. It buzzed again. He looked down and his expression changed. "What is it?" I asked. "A message from Daniel." He turned the phone in his hand but did not show me right away. That tiny hesitation lit a match inside me. "Ethan." His eyes came up. "Do not start deciding what I can handle." Regret crossed his face immediately. "You're right." He handed me the phone. Daniel's text was short. Intercepted message at the East Road. Reeves's Mark. Addressed to Alma. Below it was a photograph of a scrap of paper, rough-edged, the handwriting dark and slanted. "Ask Eleanor Wells what Jessica Woods did in Kentucky." My skin prickled. Ethan read it over my shoulder. His anger rolled through the bond, low and black. Grandma stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "Where did that come from?" she demanded. I looked at her. For the first time all day, fear had stripped every mask from her face. "You tell me," I said. A sound rose outside before she could speak. Not thunder. Engines. Ethan was on his feet in an instant. His body changed without shifting, shoulders squaring, head lifting, alpha sliding over him like armor. The air in the kitchen thickened. I moved to the window. 3 black SUVs rolled through Grandma's front gate, tires crushing gravel beneath them. Dust lifted behind them in a pale brown cloud. Men and women stepped out in dark suits that did not belong on a Kentucky farm, their shoes too polished, their faces too calm. Wolves. I knew it before Ethan said anything. Grandma whispered, "No." One of the men looked up at the house and smiled like he already owned it. Ethan stepped in front of me. I stepped beside him. The man opened a leather folder and held up a paper stamped with a silver seal. "By authority of the North American Shifter Council," he called, voice carrying clean across the yard, "we are here for Alma Wells and the unregistered bloodline heirs she carries." The man in the yard held up his silver-sealed paper like it was supposed to impress me. It did not. Maybe it would have, once, before I knew wolves existed, before I watched children shift beneath moonlight and cry for mothers who were never coming back, before I saw Ethan bleed for his pack and keep standing anyway, before my own body became a secret men in polished shoes thought they could name, measure, and claim. But standing in my grandmother's kitchen with one hand over the small rise of my stomach, all I felt was a quiet, dangerous kind of anger. Ethan stepped in front of me. I stepped right beside him. His eyes flicked down to mine. "No," I said softly. His jaw tightened, but he did not argue. That mattered. Even with his wolf pressing against his skin, even with strangers on my grandmother's land calling my unborn children heirs like they were coins in an old purse, he let me choose where I stood. Grandma moved behind us, slower than usual. From the parlor came a little hiccuping sound. I had forgotten about the Harlan children. Junie, Thomas, and little Micah had come by not an hour earlier with a basket of peaches from their mama. They were good children, farm children, the kind who knew not to interrupt adults unless blood or fire was involved. Grandma had set them in the front room with leftover biscuits and a jar of jam while we sorted through old ghosts upstairs. Now they were silent except for Micah's small, frightened breathing. My stomach clenched. Ethan heard it too. His head angled toward the sound, then back toward the yard. His voice dropped low enough that only I could hear. "Stay behind the threshold if you can." "If I can," I answered. A faint breath left him, almost a laugh, almost despair. Then he opened the kitchen door. Heat rolled in with the dust from the drive. The SUVs sat in a neat row beyond Grandma's porch, black and shiny and absurd against the weathered fence, the chicken coop, and the line of sunflowers bowing heavy-headed near the garden. 6 wolves stood in dark suits. 2 more waited by the cars. The man in front was older than Ethan, though not by much. His hair was silver at the temples, his face smooth in that careful way of men who never smiled unless there was a purpose behind it. He carried himself like a judge, but his eyes moved like a hunter's. "Alpha Woods," he said. "Your reputation for hospitality appears exaggerated." "This is not my land," Ethan replied. The man's gaze slid past him and found me. I did not move. His smile warmed by 1 degree. It made my skin crawl. "Alma Wells," he said. "Luna of Vanguard, mate to Alpha Ethan Woods. Confirmed carrier of an undocumented bloodline pregnancy." "Pregnant woman," I corrected. His eyebrows rose. "If we are introducing me," I said, "let's use words that do not make you sound like an asshole with a clipboard." Behind me, Grandma made a small choking sound that might have been a cough or pride trying to escape. Ethan's mouth did not move, but I felt something bright flicker through the bond. The councilman gave me another polished smile. "Counselor Vale." I didn't ask. "No," he said, "but you need to know who is addressing you." "I know enough." One of the women beside him stepped forward. She had a leather case in one hand and a thin silver chain around her neck. Not jewelry, a badge maybe, or a warning. "We have lawful authority," she said, voice even. "Under the Bloodline Preservation Accord and the Shifter Human Concealment Statutes, any unregistered human carrier connected to active wolf succession may be examined for stability, classification, and risk." The words landed one after another, clean knives. Human carrier. Examined. Classification. Risk. My hand tightened over my stomach. Ethan's growl moved through the kitchen door before it left his throat. The porch boards seemed to feel it. So did the wolves in the yard. 2 of them shifted their weight. Vale looked delighted. That was when I understood. They wanted him angry. Not just angry, uncontrolled. They wanted the Alpha of Vanguard snarling on a human farm, while council witnesses stood ready to write down every tooth and claw. They wanted Ethan to become the story they had already drafted. I reached for his wrist. The muscle beneath his skin was hard as rope. His pulse hammered under my fingers, fast and furious, and not entirely human. He looked down at my hand. "Don't," I murmured. His eyes were more gold than brown. I held his gaze. "Do not let this dick write the ending for you." For one breath, nothing changed. Then his hand relaxed beneath mine. Only a little. Enough. Vale noticed. His smile thinned. "Well," he said, "that is interesting. What do you want?" Ethan asked. Cooperation? That is usually what people say when they mean surrender, I said. Vale looked back at me. We want to ensure the safety of your offspring. My children, I said. Your unborn children, he allowed, as if granting me a courtesy. If both heartbeats are confirmed, and if one or both carry a viable alpha expression tied to a dormant sanctuary line, they represent a rare convergence. A rare convergence, I repeated. Listen to yourself. You're standing in my grandmother's yard talking about babies like they are livestock. No one here wishes to harm them. Then stop speaking like you already own them. The woman with the leather case stepped closer to the porch. Ethan moved so fast the air snapped, not shifting, not touching her. Just there, 1 foot ahead of me, shoulders set, a warning made flesh. She froze. Vale lifted his hand mildly. Alpha Woods. Threatening a council examiner is a serious offense. He did not threaten her, I said. No? No, if he had, everybody here would know it. That time, Grandma really did cough. The examiner's eyes narrowed. A preliminary resonance reading can be completed without physical contact. No, I said. You have not heard the procedure. I heard enough at examiner. Vale sighed, patient as a preacher with a difficult sinner. Mrs. Woods? Wells. Something in Ethan stilled beside me. Vale's gaze flicked between us. Pardon? My name is Alma Wells. You are mated to Alpha Woods. And still Alma Wells. Ethan turned his hand under mine, palm up. An invitation, not a claim. I laced my fingers through his. The council wolves watched the movement with too much interest. From the parlor, Micah whimpered again. A tiny, broken sound. It cut through all the polished threats in the yard and went straight into me. My body answered before my mind could catch up. Warmth rose beneath my ribs. Not heat, not fire. Something deeper. It spread from my stomach to my chest, then down both arms into my hands. The air in Grandma's kitchen softened. The curtains stirred, though no breeze came through. The old house seemed to exhale. Micah stopped crying. Junie's breathing steadied. Thomas whispered, Miss Alma, from the other room, but his voice held no fear now, only wonder. Outside, one of the council wolves lowered his head. Then another. The examiner with the leather case took a step back. Ethan's fingers tightened around mine, but not in alarm. In recognition. The bond opened like a door. For one impossible second, I felt more than myself. I felt my babies small and bright, their heartbeats fluttering beneath mine. I felt the Harlan children tucked in Grandma's parlor, fear draining out of them like muddy water from a basin. I felt Ethan's wolf lift its head and go quiet. Not subdued, not weakened, but steadied. Safe. That was the word. The kitchen had become safe. My breath trembled. Grandma whispered behind me, Alma. Vale's eyes sharpened. The smile came back, slower this time. There you are, he said softly. I hated the way he said it, like he had been waiting for me to reveal where I was hidden. The warmth inside me dimmed, folding itself back around the twins. I did not know how I'd done it. I only knew every person in that yard had seen enough. Vale turned his head toward Grandma. His polite mask slipped just a fraction. You should have surrendered the girl the first time, Eleanor. The whole world narrowed. Grandma went still. Not confused, not surprised. Still, like an old wound had been touched by a familiar hand. I turned slowly. The first time? She did not answer. Grandma. Her eyes shone, but her mouth stayed closed. Ethan's voice became lethal. What does that mean, Vale? Counselor Vale adjusted the cuff of his suit as if bored by our pain. It means Mrs. Wells has a long history of obstructing lawful council custody. Custody of who? I asked. Vale looked at me. The porch creaked beneath my feet, though I had not moved. You, Alma. A sound pressed against my throat, but I swallowed it down. Not here. Not for him. Vale reached into his folder and withdrew another document. The silver seal caught the sunlight. Alpha Woods, Alma Wells. You are hereby ordered to present yourselves at Vanguard Estate within 10 days for formal assessment of the unborn heirs and evaluation of the maternal line. Failure to comply will authorize protective intervention. Ethan's grip tightened. I took the paper before he could refuse it. My eyes moved down the page, over the neat, printed lines, the legal phrases, the bloodless cruelty dressed up as concern. Then I saw it. Protective custody may be enacted upon the carrier and issue if deemed necessary for council security. Carrier. Issue. Me and my babies. The paper blurred for 1 second before my anger burned everything clear again. Vale smiled from the yard. 10 days, he said. Then the council comes to collect what is owed. 10 days sounded short, until I understood how slowly fear could count. The council order followed us back to Vanguard like a shadow tied to the bumper of Ethan's truck. Daniel met us at the gate with 6 armed wolves and a face carved from worry. Sophie stood on the front steps with her arms wrapped around herself. Grace had a casserole dish in her hands, because apparently some women prepared for war by feeding everybody first. Ethan sent his answer before sunset. Alma Wells was at Vanguard. Alma Wells was under no one's custody. Alma Wells would consent to no examination, no private interview, no resonance classification, and no council hand touching her body or her children. I watched him write it at his desk, every word neat and cold. My children, I said from the chair across from him. His pen stopped. He looked up. Our children, I corrected softly. But when you're writing to Council Dix, remind them they are in my body. Something warm moved through his eyes, even beneath the anger. He crossed out one line and rewrote it. Alma Wells refuses. That was better. The 10 days came, then 12, then 20. Vale answered with threats dressed in legal manners. Ethan answered with pack law, medical exemptions, allied signatures, and a copy of every protection Vanguard had earned through blood, grief, and stubbornness. Dr. Brooks wrote reports stating that forced stress could endanger the pregnancy. Daniel found 2 old treaties that made Vale's lawyers hiss like cats. So the council waited. We waited too. Only my waiting had swollen ankles, midnight hunger, and 2 tiny creatures turning my body into shared property from the inside. By the 3rd month, I learned hunger could become a personality. I woke before dawn one morning with a craving so clear it felt like an instruction from God. Biscuits, I whispered. Ethan opened his eyes immediately. Is something wrong? Yes. He sat up so fast the blanket fell to his waist. Pain? Biscuit pain. He stared at me in the dark. I stared back. Ethan Woods, I said, do not make me repeat myself while I am carrying your children. 5 minutes later, he was downstairs in the kitchen with Grace, both of them moving around half awake and serious as surgeons. By sunrise, I had eaten 3 biscuits with butter and blackberry jam, 2 eggs, and half a bowl of fried apples Grace swore she had just happened to have ready. You didn't just happen to have fried apples ready at 6 in the morning, I said, suspicious and chewing. Grace slid more onto my plate. Don't ask questions that interfere with blessings, I cried. Not a delicate tear either. I sat at the kitchen table in Ethan's robe, curls tied up crooked on my head, and cried right into my biscuits because the apples were exactly what I had wanted. Grace patted my shoulder like this was perfectly ordinary. There now. Ethan stood near the stove holding the coffee he had forgotten to drink. His face looked helpless. Did I do something? He asked. No, I sobbed. That's the problem. Everybody's being nice. Grace's mouth twitched. Poor thing. It is poor thing, I said, pointing a fork at her through tears. Do not mock me while I am vulnerable and full of babies. After that, food began appearing wherever I went. Cornbread wrapped in clean cloth, bowls of soup, crackers in my desk drawer at the schoolroom, a jar of peanut butter tucked beside my bed after Ethan found me one night eating it with a spoon at 2 in the morning. He leaned against the doorway, hair messy from sleep, watching me with one eyebrow raised. I paused with the spoon in my mouth. "Say one word," I warned, "and I will bite you." His voice stayed grave. "I was only wondering if you needed bread." I considered this. Yes. He brought bread. I loved him more than was reasonable. I also wanted to smother him with a pillow at least twice a week. One morning, while I sat on the edge of the bed trying to convince my feet to accept shoes, Ethan stood by the window breathing. That was all. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Serious. I looked up at him. "Could you stop?" He turned. "Stop what?" "That?" His brow furrowed. "Standing?" "Breathing like you're planning a siege." He blinked once, then very carefully, like approaching a nervous horse, he said, "I can breathe elsewhere." "That would be appreciated." He left the room without another word. 10 minutes later, I found him in the hallway and burst into tears against his chest. "I'm sorry," I said, voice muffled in his shirt. "You can breathe wherever you want." His arms came around me slowly. "That's generous of you." "I was mean. You are pregnant. I am not possessed." "No," he agreed. "But if the twins have opinions, they seem strong." I sniffed. "One of them hates your breathing." His hand moved over my back, gentle and steady. "Then I will apologize to that one specifically." The laugh slipped out before I could stop it. That was how most days went. Tenderness and irritation braided so tightly, I could not always tell which one I was holding until it made me cry. Ethan became careful in a way that made me feel cherished on good mornings and ready to fight him on bad ones. He hovered near staircases. He brought blankets before I knew I was cold. He asked if I was tired, thirsty, dizzy, hungry, too warm, too still, too quiet. One afternoon, halfway down the main stairs, I stopped and turned on him. He froze 2 steps below me with both hands lifted as if I might fall directly into them. "I am pregnant, Ethan. I am not made of wet paper." His jaw tightened, not with anger, with strain. "You are carrying my children," he said. "I am trying not to lose my mind." The words emptied some of the fight out of me. He stood there beneath me, this huge, disciplined alpha who could make grown wolves lower their eyes, looking honestly terrified, because I had chosen to walk down a staircase, with laundry in my arms. I sighed. "You can carry the basket, not me." He took it immediately. "And you may ask if I need help once." His mouth softened. "Once. Per staircase. That seems fair. It is generous." "It is." I narrowed my eyes. "Do not sound amused." "I would never." He sounded deeply amused. By the 5th month, the babies began answering him. At first it was fluttering. Little bubbles beneath my skin when I lay still at night, then rolling, then kicks sharp enough to make me gasp in the middle of lessons while the children pretended not to stare. One evening, Ethan knelt beside the bed and spoke low against my stomach. "Hello, little ones." A kick landed beneath his palm. His whole face changed. I had seen Ethan in battle. I had seen his wolf rise behind his eyes. I had seen him furious, wounded, commanding, grieving. Nothing prepared me for the way he looked when one of our babies kicked him. He swallowed. "Again?" As if he understood, one baby struck hard against my left side. I winced. "That one has your manners." "I have excellent manners. You brood in doorways and threaten people with silence. That is not poor manners. That is efficiency." Another kick. Ethan's eyes warmed. "Strong." "Painful." He lifted his gaze to mine at once. "Are you all right?" "Yes." I brushed my fingers through his hair. "Just crowded." His hand stayed on my belly, warm and broad. He never touched without asking now. Not my stomach, not my back, not even my swollen feet unless I gave him a look or a yes. That night, he rubbed those feet until I wanted to purr and hated myself for it. "This is humiliating," I said, head tipped back against the chair. His thumbs worked gently along the arch of my foot. Why? Because I enjoy it. That does not sound humiliating. It is if you start looking pleased with yourself. I am pleased with myself. I opened one eye. Careful. He bent and kissed the inside of my ankle, slow and soft enough to send warmth up my leg. Better? He asked. I should have said something sensible. Instead, I whispered, "Don't stop." He didn't. The children sensed changes in me too. A little boy named Caleb fell from a tree near the schoolhouse and sobbed so hard he shifted halfway, claws scratching the dirt. Before I reached him, the quieter baby in my belly went still. Then warmth spread through me, the same deep calm that had filled Grandma's kitchen when Vale stood in the yard. Caleb's sobs slowed, his claws withdrew. He blinked up at me through tears. "Miss Alma?" "I'm here," I said, kneeling carefully beside him. "Let's see that arm." "Later, doctor." Brooks listened to both heartbeats with an expression that made Ethan stand straighter. "What?" I asked. Nathan Brooks never lied well. He took his glasses off, cleaned them, put them back on, and still looked like a man trying to choose the least alarming sentence. "One twin responds strongly to alpha presence," he said, "especially Ethan's wolf." Ethan's hand closed around mine. "And the other?" I asked. Dr. Brooks glanced toward the window, where children's voices drifted faintly from the lawn. "The other responds to distress, particularly from children. The pattern is unusual, but with what we know of the Wells line," he did not finish. He did not need to. I looked down at my stomach. One child with Ethan's wolf burning bright. One child with my family's sanctuary gift stirring before birth. 2 tiny futures already being watched by men who called babies assets. Ethan's thumb brushed over my knuckles. Different does not mean doomed. I looked at him. He said it like a vow. I held on to that. Nesting came for me like a fever. I folded tiny clothes, sorted them by size, then unfolded them because the piles did not look right. I arranged blankets in the nursery by color, then cried because the yellow one seemed lonely. Sophie found me sitting on the rug with a pair of newborn socks in my hand, weeping like someone had died. "They're too small," I said. Sophie pressed both lips together. "Do not laugh." "I'm not. You are laughing inside. I would never laugh at socks." I threw a pillow at her. She caught it and finally broke, laughing so hard she had to sit down. "Alma, they are babies. Their feet are supposed to be small." "What if they get cold?" "Then we put socks on them." "What if the socks fall off?" "Then we put them back on." I stared at her. She softened. "Come here. I do not want comfort from someone who mocks infant footwear." "Yes, you do." I did. She sat beside me on the rug, and we folded the little clothes again. Slower this time. Grandma came often. She sewed with grace by the window, her needle flashing through soft cotton while the evening light touched the silver in her hair. Sometimes I caught her watching me with pride so tender it hurt to see. Other times sorrow sat behind her eyes. Old sorrow. Patient sorrow. The kind that knew it had not finished taking its share. One night she laid a small green blanket across my lap. "Your mama liked green," she said. I ran my fingers over the stitches. "Did she?" Grandma nodded. "What else did she like?" Her hands stilled. For a moment I thought she might finally open whatever locked door she kept inside herself. "She liked thunderstorms," Grandma said at last. "Said they made the whole world tell the truth." I looked up, but she had already bent back over her sewing. The months stretched. My belly rounded and lowered. My walk turned slow and stubborn. Sleep became a negotiation I usually lost. The twins pressed against my ribs, my bladder, my patience, and every fear I tried to keep folded away. Then the storm came. Rain struck the windows hard enough to wake me before dawn. Thunder rolled over Vanguard, deep and long, shaking through the walls. For a second, I lay still in the dark, with one hand on my stomach, listening to Ethan breathe beside me. Not too serious this time. Just there. Safe. Another rumble moved through the estate. Then pain sliced low through my back. I sucked in a breath and gripped the sheet. Ethan woke instantly. Alma? I don't know, I whispered. The pain faded, leaving my skin damp and my heart racing. I started to sit up. Warmth spread beneath me. Not sweat, not rain. For one suspended second, I could not move. Lightning flashed white across the room, bright enough to show Ethan's face changing as he looked down. The sheets beneath me were wet. Then the next pain took hold, hard and deep, and the long waiting ended. The second pain stole the room from me. I bent forward with both hands fisted in the wet sheet, breath trapped somewhere high in my throat while thunder rolled over Vanguard like the sky itself had come apart. Ethan was already out of bed, one hand hovering near my shoulder, the other reaching for the lamp. Alma, he said, voice rough with sleep and terror. Tell me what you need. I wanted to answer like a composed woman, like a teacher, like someone with a plan. Instead, another cramp clenched low and brutal through my back, and I grabbed his wrist hard enough to make even him inhale. Brooks, I ground out. Ethan moved. The estate woke around us in layers. Footsteps in the hall, a door opening. Sophie's voice high and frightened. Grace calling for towels. Rain hammering the windows with both fists. By the time Dr. Brooks arrived, hair flattened from the storm and medical bag in hand, I was standing beside the bed in Ethan's shirt, breathing through my teeth while warm water still trickled down my thighs. He took one look at me and became all calm hands and steady voice. All right, Alma. Early labor, but moving quickly. Let's get you settled. Settled, I repeated, laughing once without humor. That is a gentle word for this bullshit. Eleanor appeared in the doorway wearing her robe and the expression of a woman who had seen life enter the world and was not impressed by anyone's panic. Ethan asked Dr. Brooks for the third time in 10 minutes. Is she supposed to hurt this much? Grandma pointed one finger at him. Alpha or not, if you faint in this room, I will step over you. Sophie made a strangled sound from behind Grace. I am not fainting, Ethan said. You look like a man negotiating with death. I am standing right here, I snapped, as another contraction climbed up my spine. Can everybody stop discussing death while I'm trying to have babies? Ethan was beside me instantly. I'm sorry. You did this to me. His face went solemn in that ridiculous way of his. Yes, ma'am. I would have laughed if my body had not decided to split me open from the inside. The next hours blurred into rain, breath, pain, and hands. Ethan stayed where I put him, behind me when my back screamed, in front of me when I needed something to grip, silent when I told him to stop talking, talking when I got scared by the silence. I cursed him, the moon, his ancestors, and one unfortunate chair leg I kicked during transition. Grace boiled water because of course she did, muttering that every birth needed hot water, whether doctors admitted it or not. Sophie cried into a towel and insisted, I am not crying, while tears ran down her cheeks. Daniel stood guard outside the door, his presence a steady pressure in the hall, as if he could fight childbirth if it came through with bad intentions. Then there was no room left for anything but pushing. Dr. Brooks spoke near my knees. Eleanor held a cool cloth to my forehead. Ethan's hand was in mine, his knuckles locked in my grip. I can't, I whispered. Grandma leaned close. Yes, you can, baby. You already are. The first cry came before I understood the first baby was free. Fierce, furious, alive. A sound like protest and victory all at once. Dr. Brooks caught him properly and laughed under his breath. Strong boy. Ethan stopped breathing. Our son screamed at the world with tiny fists clenched, his damp curls dark against his head. For one impossible second, his eyes flashed wolf gold beneath the lamplight. Every wolf in the room went still. Ethan made a sound I had never heard from him. Not a growl, not a sob. Something broken open. Alma, he whispered, but I could not stay in that wonder. My body pulled me under again. The second baby came quieter. too quiet. The room changed. I knew it before anyone said a word. I felt the sudden absence of sound like a hand closing around my throat. Dr. Brooks moved fast. Sophie stopped crying. Even the rain seemed to hold itself back. "No," I said. Ethan's face had gone rigid with fear. "No," I said again, stronger. "Give her to me." "Alma," Dr. Brooks began. "Give her to me." He laid our daughter against my chest, small and slippery and silent, her body lighter than fear should be allowed to weigh. I cupped her with shaking hands. The bond opened. Not toward Ethan, not toward the pack, but down into blood and milk, and the small, quiet place where she had been tucked beneath my heart. "Come on, baby," I whispered, my lips against her damp forehead. "Mama's here. Come home to me." For one breath, nothing. Then her mouth opened. The cry was thin at first, a little thread of sound, then stronger. Then loud enough to make Sophie burst into a fresh round of tears. Down the hall, a child who had been crying out from a nightmare suddenly went silent. Then another. The whole estate seemed to settle, fear draining from the walls themselves. Eleanor pressed a hand to her mouth. "There it is," she whispered. "The Wells gift." I held my daughter tighter and cried until I could not tell what was joy, what was relief, and what was simply my body emptying itself of terror. Afterward, time lost its edges. There were blankets, warm cloths. Dr. Brooks checking me with careful, respectful hands. Ethan cutting cords with fingers that trembled. Grace bringing broth I could barely taste but drank because she looked ready to spoon-feed me by force. Sophie whispering that they were beautiful every 30 seconds, like she had discovered a new language and only knew one sentence. I thought love would arrive like music. It came like being struck. I looked at their faces. My son's stubborn little mouth, my daughter's tiny brow furrowed, as if she had opinions already, and something in me rearranged forever. It was fierce enough to hurt. Terrifying enough to make me want to hand them to someone safer than me. Wonderful enough that I could not look away. Then my milk came in, and wonder met reality. My breasts ached so badly, I wanted to cry before anyone touched me. One baby latched like he had been born offended and hungry. The other rooted, fussed, lost the nipple, screamed, found it again, then spit up down the last clean nightgown I owned. "This is supposed to be natural," I said, staring at the wet mess on my chest. Eleanor snorted softly from the chair beside the bed. "So is thunder. Still scares folks." By the second night, I understood exhaustion could become a room with no doors. Both babies had eaten. Both had been changed. Both were warm. Both were furious. I sat in bed with my robe open, hair loose around my shoulders, tears sliding down my face, while my son wailed against one arm and my daughter kicked beneath the blanket in my lap. "I fed you," I whispered. "I changed you. I'm here. What else do you need?" Ethan stood beside the bed holding our son like he was made of glass and fire. His shirt was wrinkled, his beard was untrimmed, his eyes were wild with helpless love. I looked up at him through tears. "Do not just stand there looking tragic. Burp him." He obeyed instantly. 3 pats later, our son spat milk down the front of Ethan's shirt. Ethan looked at the mess, then at me. "Is that good?" I started laughing. Not prettily, not gently. I laughed so hard it turned into crying, and then I was doing both at once while Ethan stood there covered in baby spit-up, looking more proud than any man had a right to be. "Yes," I said, wiping my face with the back of my wrist. "That's good." He glanced down at our son. "Well done. Do not encourage him. He seems pleased." He is 2 days old. He has instincts. So do I, and mine are telling me to eat an entire loaf of bread. Grace brought one within 10 minutes. The days narrowed to feeding, burping, changing, sleeping in scraps, and waking drenched in milk, because one baby sighed too loudly. I loved them with my whole soul. I also wanted 5 minutes where no one needed my body, then guilt would bite me so hard I could barely breathe. Eleanor found me crying over a basket of tiny laundry. "I wanted them," I said before she could ask. I love them. I do, You are tired of being touched. The words broke something loose in me. I nodded. She sat beside me, slower than usual, and took my hand. Baby, loving them does not mean you will not get tired of being touched. That does not make you a bad mother. It makes you human. I leaned against her shoulder and let myself be somebody's child for a minute. That night, near moonrise, peace finally found us. Both babies slept on my chest, warm and heavy, their breaths feather soft against my skin. Ethan sat beside me with one hand braced behind my back, not holding me up unless I needed him to. The nursery smelled of milk, lavender soap, rain-damp wood, and the tiny newness of our children. He looked at them like the world had given him something he did not know how to deserve. They're real, he murmured. I smiled, exhausted down to my bones. Very real, especially at 3 a.m. His thumb brushed lightly against my shoulder. You are incredible. I am leaking milk and wearing a robe with spit up on it. Yes, he said softly, and incredible. My throat tightened. For one quiet moment, I let myself believe nothing would reach us here. Then Daniel knocked on the nursery door. Not a friendly knock, not a soft one, a warning. Ethan stood before Daniel spoke. I felt the change in him through the bond, alpha rising beneath father, danger cutting through moonlight. Daniel opened the door just enough for his face to show. The council is at the gate, he said. Vale came early. He's demanding immediate examination of the twins under protective custody. The room tilted. My sleeping babies stirred against my chest. I lowered my face to them, breathing in milk and moonlight, and my voice came out quiet enough to frighten even me. No one is taking my babies.
The council came before the milk had dried on my shirt. That was the first thing I thought when Daniel spoke from the nursery door. Not strategy, not law, not which gates were manned and which wolves had shifted along the eastern fence. Milk. Moonlight. My children asleep against Alma's chest, and men at my gate demanding custody with clean hands and silver seals. Alma did not move at first. Her face stayed lowered over the twins, her loose curls falling forward, her robe slipped open enough for both babies to rest skin to skin. She was exhausted down to the marrow. I could feel it through the bond. Pain, soreness, fierce love, a hollow ache where sleep should have been. Then anger rose beneath all of it. Quiet, steady, terrifying. No one is taking my babies, she said again. Daniel's jaw tightened. Vale is requesting entry to the Great Hall. Requesting, I repeated. He has 6 council wolves, 2 examiners, and a writ. Then he has paper and bad judgment. Alma lifted her head. Ethan. I looked at her, and my wolf strained so hard beneath my skin that the room sharpened. The rain on the windows, the warm scent of newborn skin, the iron thread of Alma's healing body, the fear Daniel was trying not to show. I forced my hands open. I'll handle it, I said. No. The word was soft, but it stopped me faster than a command. Dr. Brooks stepped forward from the corner, where he had been checking notes with the stubbornness of a man pretending not to panic. Alma, you delivered 2 days ago. You should not be standing in the Great Hall, arguing with council representatives. I should not be doing many things, she said. Bleeding into a pad the size of a saddle while strangers call my children assets is high on that list. But here we are. Sophie made a small sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. I crossed the room slowly, stopping beside the bed. Alma, you do not have to prove anything to them. Her eyes met mine, warm brown, tired, bright with pain and will. I'm not proving anything, she said. I am reminding them whose body they are threatening. My throat closed around every argument I wanted to make. Because she was right. Because she had always been right about this part. Protection without choice was just another cage with softer bars. "Can I help you stand?" I asked. For a moment, something in her face gentled. "Yes." I slid one arm behind her back and waited until she leaned into me. She rose with a sharp breath she tried to hide. I felt the tremor in her legs, the way her hand clutched my forearm until the contraction of pain passed through her hips. Every instinct I had screamed to carry her, to lock the door, to put my body between hers and the world until the world learned manners. Instead, I stood where she allowed me. Grace wrapped her in a thick, dark shawl. Sophie took our daughter long enough for Alma to tie her robe and winced as if someone had handed her a holy relic. "She's so small," Sophie whispered. "She is listening," Alma said, voice thin but dry. "Do not offend her." Our daughter yawned. Alma smiled despite herself. I took our son carefully. He stirred against my chest, mouth opening in a furious little complaint before settling again at the sound of my heartbeat. His scent hit me fresh and deep. Milk, warmth, wolf. Mine, ours, not property, not lineage, not leverage. My son. By the time we reached the great hall, Vanguard had gathered in silence. No children. Daniel had seen to that. The youngest were tucked in the inner rooms with pack mothers and guards at every door. But the adult wolves stood along the walls, shoulders set, eyes lowered when Alma entered. Not to me, to her. She noticed. I felt it move through her. A flicker of surprise, then unease, then something steadier. She did not want worship. She wanted safety. Vale stood beneath the old chandelier as though he had been invited to dinner. His suit was immaculate. His silver hair lay smooth at the temples. Beside him stood the same examiner from Eleanor's farm, leather case in hand. 2 council guards flanked the door, careful not to look as armed as they were. Vale's eyes went first to the twins. That alone nearly cost him his throat. Daniel shifted slightly, reading me. "Ready?" Alma's fingers brushed my wrist, not restraining, reminding. I breathed through my teeth and stayed human. "Counselor Vale," I said, "you were denied entry, and yet here I am." His smile was mild. "The birth changes jurisdictional urgency." "No, it doesn't. The confirmed live delivery of rare bloodline offspring authorized protective assessment under... If you say protective custody in front of my mate again," I said, "you will finish the sentence without teeth." The hall went still. Vale's smile sharpened. "Threats against council officers are unwise, Alpha Woods." Alma stepped half a pace forward. She held our daughter close to her chest, the shawl wrapped around them both. Her body swayed once. I moved before I thought. She did not look at me, but she leaned back just enough to use my strength. "Call them my children," she said. Vale looked at her. "Pardon?" "My children, not offspring, not bloodline assets, not an issue. If your mouth cannot form the word, I will assume you are too stupid to be in charge of paperwork." Behind me, Grace whispered, "Lord, I love that girl." The corner of Daniel's mouth twitched. Vale's eyes cooled. "You are emotional. I gave birth 2 days ago. I am bleeding, leaking milk, and standing here because a legal dick showed up at my door before breakfast. Emotional is the kindest thing I plan to be." Something fierce and bright moved through the bond. Pride, mine, hers, the pack's. The examiner opened her case. "A preliminary scan of both infants will determine whether removal is necessary." "No," Alma said. "You do not understand the risk." I understand you brought a bag to examine babies you were not invited to touch. Vale folded his hands in front of him. Vanguard has suffered repeated breaches. Ironclaw infiltrated your territory. Your Alpha was physically compromised for years. Your finances were unstable. Your mate is an unregistered human carrier from a concealed bloodline. By every reasonable measure, this estate is not secure enough to house children of such consequence. My son shifted against me, tiny brow furrowing. I lowered my voice to soothe him, though my eyes stayed on Vale. Careful. But Alma spoke before I could. You want to discuss secure? She asked. Vale inclined his head as though granting permission. She looked around the hall, at Daniel, scarred and steady by the doorway, at Sophie, with red-rimmed eyes and both hands fisted at her sides, at Grace, who had fed half the estate through grief, at Dr. Brooks, exhausted and furious, at Eleanor, standing near the stairs with her face drawn tight. Then Alma looked at me. I felt the touch of her gaze, like a hand over an old wound. This pack has taken in children everyone else abandoned, she said. Ethan sold pieces of his own family history to keep them fed. He bled quietly because he thought his pain mattered less than their safety. He has stood between danger and this pack until standing should have been impossible. My breath caught. She turned back to Vale. He has made mistakes. So have I. So has everyone in this room. But he has never once looked at my babies like bargaining pieces. He has never called my body council property. He has never hidden behind law to make cruelty sound respectable. Vale's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Alma's voice dropped. So do not stand in our home and tell me he is unfit while you speak of newborns like inventory. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, one by one, the Vanguard wolves lowered their heads. Not in submission, in agreement. Vale smiled. It was the first honest thing about him, and I hated it. Such devotion, he said softly. Touching, truly. My wolf went still. A predator recognizes another predator when it stops pretending to be anything else. Vale took one step forward. Tell me, Luna Alma, did he also tell you whose claws opened your mother's throat? The hall froze. I felt Alma's confusion before the words fully landed. Then her pain, a thin, sudden thread. I turned on Vale. What did you say? He looked at me as if I were a child who had finally found the trap under the rug. Surely the Alpha of Vanguard knows the stains on his own bloodline. My heartbeat slowed. No, I knew every enemy my family had made, every conflict, every border death, every lie my father had buried in official records. I knew enough ghosts to fill this hall twice over. But not this. Not Lydia Wells, not Alma's mother. Alma turned toward me. Her face had changed, not broken yet, searching. Ethan? I don't know, I said. The words came out raw, useless, true. Vale's voice cut through the silence like a blade drawn slowly from a sheath. Jessica Woods. My mother's name struck the room. For 1 second I was 7 years old again, standing at the top of a staircase, watching my mother come through the door near dawn, with blood dark on one sleeve. I remembered her face turning when she saw me. Not guilt, not fear, warning. Then my father's hands on my shoulders. Go back to bed, Ethan. Paper burning in the hearth the next day. The lie of a border conflict. A grave without a body. Alma took a step back. I reached for her, then stopped myself before my hand touched her arm. Alma, I said. I did not know. Her eyes searched mine. Through the bond, I opened everything I had. Shock, horror, the old confusion I had carried for decades. No shield, no pride, no alpha wall. Just truth. I did not know, I said again, softer. For a moment, she almost believed me. Then her gaze shifted past my shoulder. To Eleanor. The old woman stood near the stairs, one hand pressed against the banister. Her face had folded inward, grief and dread making her look suddenly smaller. She did not look surprised. Alma saw it the same second I did. The bond filled with a hurt so deep it had no sound. "Grandma," Alma whispered. Eleanor closed her eyes, and Alma's voice broke. "Grandma, you knew?" For a moment, no one breathed. Alma stood in the center of the hall with our daughter pressed to her chest, the shawl slipping from one shoulder, her eyes fixed on Eleanor like the rest of us had disappeared. "Grandma," she whispered. "You knew?" Eleanor's hand tightened on the banister. The old woman who had snapped at council wolves, hidden bloodlines under floorboards, and stared down monsters with nothing but a kitchen knife and stubbornness, looked suddenly small. "Alma," she said, voice rough, "not here." The words landed wrong. I felt it through the bond before Alma moved. A sharp, tearing pain. Not the pain of birth, not exhaustion. Something older being cut open. "Not here," Alma repeated. Our daughter stirred against her, a small, unhappy sound rising from the blanket. Eleanor took one careful step forward. "Baby, please." "No." Alma's voice broke and hardened at the same time. "My mother died, and you think the problem is the room?" Vale watched with the faintest curve to his mouth. That smile nearly got him killed. My wolf surged so violently my bones ached. Daniel shifted from the wall, ready to intercept me if I lost control. I could smell the council guards tensing by the door, eager for the mistake. Eager for the Alpha of Vanguard to become exactly what their paperwork said I was. Alma's hand found my wrist. She did not look at me. She did not comfort me. She simply touched me once, shaking and furious. And I remembered who mattered. Not Vale, not the council, her, them. I turned my head slowly toward Vale. "Get out." Vale lifted his brows. "This matter is finished for tonight. The assessment order remains active." "So does my patience," I said, "and it is in worse condition." Vale glanced at the twins again. "You cannot keep them hidden behind sentiment forever." Alma stepped forward before I could answer. She had delivered 2 children 2 days ago. She could barely stand without pain. Her body smelled of milk, blood, lavender, and exhaustion. Still, every wolf in that hall seemed to lean away from the quiet force of her. "My children are not hidden," she said. "They are home. And if you look at them like that again, counselor, I will make sure every mother in this pack knows exactly what kind of dick stands in a great hall, threatening newborns." Grace muttered, "Amen." Vale's mouth flattened. He had wanted fear. He had wanted me feral. He had wanted Alma broken open in public so he could step over the pieces with a legal smile. Instead, Vanguard watched her stand. Daniel moved to the door. "Counselor." The guards hesitated. I let my eyes bleed gold. That helped them decide. Vale collected his papers with insulting calm. At the threshold, he turned back once, his gaze sliding to Eleanor. "You delayed the inevitable once," he said softly. "Do not mistake survival for victory." Then he left. The doors closed behind him with a sound like a verdict. For several seconds, the hall remained frozen. Then our son began to cry against my chest. The small sound cut through everything. Alma turned toward him automatically, even with betrayal carved across her face. Her body swayed. I stepped closer, but did not touch until her eyes flicked to mine. "May I?" I asked. She nodded once. I shifted our son carefully into her free arm, helping support both babies while Dr. Brooks came near with the caution of a man approaching a wound. "Alma," he said gently, "you need to sit down." She looked past him to Eleanor. "How long?" she asked. Eleanor's lips trembled. "Alma, not like this." Alma gave a laugh that had no humor in it. "You keep saying that as if there is a prettier way to tell me my mother was murdered." My stomach turned at the word. Murdered. By Jessica Woods. By my mother. A name I had buried under childhood confusion and my father's lies. A ghost I had thought belonged only to me. Now she stood between me and the woman I loved. Blood on both our histories. "I didn't know," I said quietly. Alma looked at me. The bond between us was open enough that I could not hide, even if I wanted to. Shock, horror, disgust. The old memory of blood on a sleeve. My father burning papers, the empty grave. My own sickened realization that maybe the answers had been inside my house all along. "I didn't know," I repeated. Her eyes searched mine for a long second. "I believe that," she said. Relief hit me so hard I almost closed my eyes. Then she added, "But I don't know what else I believe right now." That was fair. It still cut. Sophie came forward with tears drying on her cheeks. "Alma, come on. Let me help you upstairs. I can walk." "No one said you couldn't," Sophie said softly. "But you shouldn't have to." Alma's mouth tightened. For a moment, I thought she would refuse everyone. Then our daughter whimpered against her chest, and Alma looked down. "All right," she whispered. Grace moved to her other side. Dr. Brooks followed, already speaking about rest and bleeding and fluids, as if ordinary care could stitch the night back together. Eleanor did not move. Alma passed her on the stairs without looking at her. That, more than anything, made Eleanor flinch. I stayed in the hall until Alma was gone, until the last whisper faded upstairs, until the front doors were barred and Daniel returned with word that Vale had been escorted beyond the outer gate. Only then did I let myself turn toward Eleanor. "Where?" I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine. She understood. "The east parlor." I found her there 20 minutes later, standing in the dark beside a cold fireplace. Rain tapped lightly against the windows, leftover stormwater dripping from the eaves. She did not sit. Neither did I. "Tell me Jessica didn't kill Lydia Wells," I said. Eleanor closed her eyes. My chest tightened. "Tell me," I said, my voice dropping, "that Vale twisted it. Tell me there is one part of this that isn't rotten." I can't. 2 words. That was all it took to make the room tilt. My mother's face came back in pieces. Dark hair pinned severely, hands that rarely trembled, blood on her sleeve. My father's voice telling me to go back to bed. I gripped the back of a chair until the wood creaked. "How long have you known?" Eleanor opened her eyes. "Since the night I buried my daughter." The words scraped out of her. For a moment, all I heard was the rain. "You let Alma come here," I said. "You let her bind herself to me, carry my children, take my name in front of a pack while you knew my mother had killed hers." Eleanor's face hardened, but grief shook beneath it. "I let Alma choose love when she had found it." "You let her walk blind." "Yes," she snapped, "and I have paid for it every night of my life." Not enough. Her chin lifted. For one ugly second, I wanted her to defend herself. I wanted a lie I could tear apart. I wanted someone in front of me to be the villain because my mother was not there for me to hate properly. But Eleanor only looked old and guilty. I was afraid, she said. Jessica came for Alma. Lydia refused to hand over her baby. By the time I got there, my daughter was bleeding into the floorboards, and your mother was gone. I took Alma and ran. I hid her from wolves, from the council, from every name attached to that night. From me. You were a child. I became Alpha. And still a Woods. The words struck clean because I could not deny them. My blood had carried a danger Alma had not been allowed to name. I looked toward the ceiling as if I could see through wood and plaster to the nursery above us. Alma should have been asleep. She should have been warm in bed, our children safe beside her, not lying there with her mother's murder dragged into the open by a council bastard who enjoyed the sound of wounds opening. We tell her everything, I said. Eleanor nodded slowly. Yes. Not tonight. Her gaze sharpened. I heard myself, but I did not stop. Alma can't hear this tonight, not after the birth. I rubbed a hand over my face, exhausted and sick. She is bleeding. She hasn't slept. Vale ripped this open in front of everyone. If we pour the rest on her now, it could break her. Somewhere beyond the parlor door, a baby cried. Soft at first, then closer. I turned my head, listening. The sound faded down the hall. I thought of Alma pacing upstairs with one of the twins against her shoulder, trying to soothe a newborn while grief tore through her body. I thought I was protecting her from one more blow. I did not know those words would be the ones she carried out of Vanguard. Eleanor looked at me with something like pity. That is how it starts, she said. What? Calling silence mercy. I stared at her. She wiped at her cheek with the heel of her hand. I told myself the same thing. I left before I said something I could not take back. The rest of the night moved in fragments. Daniel tightened the perimeter. Brooks checked on Alma twice and told me she was resting. Though he did not like her pulse, Grace brewed tea. No one drank. Sophie sat on the nursery floor until Alma asked to be alone. I stood outside the door once, hand raised, listening. Inside, Alma hummed softly to the babies. The sound nearly brought me to my knees. I wanted to go in. I wanted to kneel at her feet and swear every truth I had, every secret I did not yet know, every piece of my cursed family history would be dragged into the light. But she had asked for quiet, so I gave it. Near dawn, I checked the eastern corridor myself. The house had settled into that fragile silence that comes after a night of too much fear. Lamps burned low, rain streaked the windows. Somewhere downstairs, a floorboard groaned under a guard's careful step. The bond felt bruised, not closed, just folded inward, like Alma had wrapped herself around pain and left me outside it. I went to the nursery. The door stood open. At first, my mind refused what my eyes saw. The rocking chair was empty. The blanket Grace had made lay over one arm. Both bassinets stood beside the window, still and waiting. Empty. Alma? No answer. I crossed the room too fast, already reaching through the bond, already searching for milk-warm skin, newborn breath, her heartbeat, their heartbeats. Nothing close. On the changing table, beneath the silver Wells charm, lay a folded note. My hand shook when I opened it. Do not follow me. I need one place where no one lies to protect me. The paper blurred in my grip. Outside the nursery window, the rain began again, washing the world clean of tracks. My mate and children were gone.
I left before dawn while Vanguard still smelled of rain, milk, and old secrets. Ethan's words followed me down the hall. Alma can't hear this tonight. Not after the birth. He had meant mercy. I knew that. The bond had been open enough for me to feel the ache behind it, the fear, the love, the desperate wish to set one hand between me and the next blow. But mercy without truth was still a locked door. My grandmother had built a whole life out of locked doors and called it protection. I could not stay in a house where the man I loved had started reaching for the same key. I packed by the nursery lamp with one baby whimpering against my shoulder and the other sleeping in the bassinet with his fists tucked beneath his chin. Diapers, wipes, 2 blankets, 3 tiny gowns, nursing pads, my phone charger, the Silver Wells charm. My hands shook so badly I dropped a pair of socks. They looked foolish on the rug. Little white things no bigger than my thumb, and suddenly I was crying over them because my babies were too small, because my mother had died with my name in her mouth, because everyone I loved had decided silence was something I should be grateful for. Not now, I whispered to myself. Our daughter stirred. I picked up the socks. At the changing table, I wrote the note. Do not follow me. I need one place where no one lies to protect me. I left it beneath the charm where Ethan would see it. The guard by the service door opened his mouth when he saw me with 2 newborns bundled against my chest and an overnight bag cutting into my shoulder. I looked at him. Not tonight. He stepped aside. Maybe because I was Luna. Maybe because I was bleeding into a pad the size of a folded towel and looked half out of my mind. Maybe because some things should not require explanation. The rain had softened to mist by the time I drove through the gates. I kept both hands on the wheel like I was 17 again and taking my first driving test in Kentucky. Every bump sent pain through my hips. My breasts ached hard and hot beneath my shirt. The babies slept in their seats, tiny mouths slack, unaware that their mother had no plan beyond distance. A cheap hotel at the edge of town took cash without asking questions. The woman behind the desk had tired eyes and a coffee stain on her sleeve. She looked at the babies, then at me, and her face gentled. Long night? I almost laughed. Yes, ma'am. She slid a key card across the counter. Room 214. Elevator's on the left. Ice machine doesn't work, but the vending machine does if you kick it low. Thank you. You need help carrying anything? Kindness nearly undid me. No, I said too quickly. Then softer. Thank you. Room 214 had thin curtains, a humming heater, and carpet that smelled faintly of old cigarettes no amount of lemon cleaner could hide. The bedspread was scratchy. The lamp beside the bed flickered once before settling into a dull yellow glow. I shut the door, locked it, latched the chain, and leaned my forehead against the wood. For one breath, there was silence. Then, my son woke up angry. His sister joined him half a minute later, offended by the idea of suffering alone. All right, I said, turning around. All right, I hear you. They had eaten before we left. It did not matter. Newborn time was not real time. Hunger came like weather. Sudden, unreasonable, impossible to argue with. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened my shirt, and tried to get my son latched first. He found me with furious determination, his little jaw working like he had been personally betrayed by the delay. Milk let down so hard it soaked the nursing pad on the other side. Then the cramps started. I bent over him, breathing through my teeth, while my body reminded me it was still wounded. His sister rooted against my arm, mouth open, searching. I shifted him, tried to bring her close, but she slipped off the nipple twice and screamed as if I had insulted her ancestors. I'm trying, I told her. Please, baby, work with me a little. She did not work with me. She kicked. She cried. She turned her head at the wrong second, then got mad, because the milk was not where she expected it to be. By the time she finally latched, my back was burning, my shirt was wet, and my son had fallen asleep with milk at the corner of his mouth, like a drunk old man after supper. This is supposed to be natural, I muttered. Nothing about sitting alone in a hotel room with both breasts out, blood in my underwear, and 2 babies attached to me like tiny starving wolves felt natural. It felt impossible. An hour later, they were dry. They were warm. They had eaten. They were still screaming. I changed my daughter on a towel spread across the bed, and my son spit up down the last clean blanket before I could get it beneath him. The sour milk smell rose sharp and immediate. I stared at it for 3 whole seconds, then laughed once because the alternative was putting my head through the wall. "Fine," I said. "We hate blankets now. Good to know." I ate vending machine crackers while bouncing my daughter against my shoulder. Later, I found half a cold sandwich in the paper bag from the lobby and chewed without tasting it. Nursing twins made hunger feel bottomless, but grief sat in my stomach like a stone. My phone kept lighting up. Sophie, Grace, Dr. Brooks, Grandma. I watched Eleanor's name glow on the screen until it disappeared. Then Ethan. I did not answer. The bond stretched between us, bruised but alive. I could feel him somewhere beyond the walls of my anger, awake, frantic, holding himself back by force. That restraint hurt worse than if he had stormed the door. It meant he had heard me. It meant he could learn. It meant I could not make him simple in my mind. The phone buzzed again, this time a text. "Ethan, I know you told me not to follow. I won't come in. Brooks is nearby if you need him. I am sorry. You were right. I should have told you." I read it once, then again. No excuse, no defense. No, I was only trying to protect you. Just apology, and the awful dignity of him honoring the boundary I had drawn while I was too tired to stand straight. I hated him a little for making that matter. I loved him a little for the same reason. My fingers hovered over the screen. Me. You had no right to decide when my mother's death belonged to me. The answer came almost immediately. "Ethan, I know." 2 words. They cracked something open in me. I set the phone face down on the bed and pressed both hands over my eyes. The babies were quiet for 6 blessed minutes. 6 minutes of humming heater, rain tapping the window, and my own breath trying to remember how to move. Then my daughter started again. Not a hungry cry this time. A tired one, a lost one. The kind that made her whole little body tremble. "Oh, sweetheart." I picked her up carefully. "I know. I don't like this room either." My son woke up because his sister had opinions. Soon, both of them were crying so hard their faces scrunched red-brown and furious beneath the weak yellow light. I tried the bed, the chair, walking, humming, nursing again. My daughter refused to latch. My son latched, sucked twice, then pulled off and screamed at my breast like it had disappointed him morally. "That is enough," I told him, voice shaking. "My nipple did not kill anybody. Stop looking betrayed." He screamed louder. By sometime after 2 in the morning, I ended up on the bathroom floor because the tile was cool and the light was softer there. I had both babies against my bare chest, one tucked in each arm, their blankets loose around us. My robe hung open. Milk leaked down my stomach. My whole body hurt. The mirror above the sink showed a woman I barely recognized. Loose curls tangled around her face, warm brown skin damp with sweat, eyes swollen from crying, mouth pressed flat in stubborn survival. I looked like someone's mother. I looked like someone's orphan. Both babies cried against me. "Please," I whispered, "Mama's trying. Please, babies, I'm trying." My daughter hiccuped. My son's cry thinned. Something in my chest opened. Not big, not bright. Just a small, warm place beneath the hurt. I breathed into it, held them closer, let the hum rise from my throat without thinking. Slowly, slowly their bodies softened. One breath, then another. Their crying faded into broken little sighs. I sat there on the cheap tile, afraid to move, afraid to hope, holding the only 2 people in the world who needed me more than they blamed me. The room phone rang. The sound sliced through the quiet so sharply both babies jerked. I stared at the beige receiver on the wall beside the sink. It rang again. No one should have known this room number. I stood on shaking legs, keeping the twins pressed close, and picked up. "Hello?" The desk clerk's voice came through low and nervous. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you, but are you Mrs. Woods?" My blood went cold. "Who's asking?" A pause. Then, from somewhere downstairs, muffled but clear enough to hear through the line, a woman's polished voice said, "Tell her Child Services is here for Mrs. Woods and the Alpha heirs." The hotel hallway outside my door went silent. The receiver felt slick in my hand. For a second, I only heard the hum of the bathroom light and the soft, broken breathing of my babies against my chest. Then the woman downstairs spoke again, louder this time, her polished voice carrying through the clerk's line. "Tell Mrs. Woods we are authorized to conduct an immediate welfare assessment of the Alpha heirs. Alpha heirs. Not my children. Not newborns. Not babies." My fear changed shape. It did not vanish. It settled low and hot beneath my ribs, hardening into something I could stand on. I lifted the phone closer. "Ma'am," I said to the desk clerk, keeping my voice calm because panic would not help either of us. "Do not send that woman upstairs." A small pause. "She says she's with Child Services." "Child Services does not call babies Alpha heirs." Another pause. This one trembled. "I didn't think so." "What room is she near?" "She's still at the desk, but—" A sharp sound cut through the line. A muffled argument. The clerk gasped. Then the call went dead. I stared at the receiver for half a breath before hanging it back on the wall. My daughter shifted against me, her mouth rooting blindly toward my skin. My son made a small, tired sound in his throat. Both of them were warm, milk-drunk, and impossibly small. "No," I whispered. Not to them. Not to myself. To whoever decided a cheap hotel room and a bleeding mother made easy prey. I stepped out of the bathroom and glanced around room 214 with new eyes. One bed, one chair, one table bolted to the wall, a lamp with a heavy ceramic base, a door with a chain, a deadbolt, and a knob that suddenly looked like a joke. The knock came before I reached the bed. 3 neat taps, not hard, not polite either. Practiced. "Mrs. Woods?" a woman called. "This is Marissa Cole with County Child Services. Open the door, please." I laid the babies in the dry bathtub on top of 2 folded towels, my hands lingering over them for one breath too long. The tub was the safest place in the room if the door came open. That thought made something inside me go very still. My daughter's face scrunched. I touched her cheek. "Hush now, sweet girl. Mama's right here." The Silverwell's charm lay on the sink where I had set it earlier. I closed my fist around it, the crescent and well biting into my palm, and walked to the door. "Show me your identification," I said. A card slid beneath the door. I did not bend to pick it up. "What county?" Silence. Then, "Ma'am, this will go easier if you cooperate." I looked through the peephole. The woman in the hall wore a navy blazer, dark slacks, and a face built for courtrooms. Her hair was pulled back tight. No purse, no worn folder, no tired county worker's badge clipped crooked after a long night. Behind her stood a man in hotel maintenance coveralls holding a keycard he did not know how to hold. His eyes flicked up toward the ceiling camera, then away. Counsel. They always smelled clean, even when they came to steal. "You are not Child Services," I said. The woman's smile barely moved. "You are exhausted, postpartum and alone with 2 vulnerable infants. We're here to help." Funny. That is almost exactly how every lying dick introduces himself before he starts taking things. Her eyes cooled. There she was. "Open the door, Alma." My name in her mouth made my stomach turn. I stepped back and dragged the chair under the knob. My body protested immediately, hips aching, stitches pulling, milk leaking warm down my stomach, but pain had become background noise. I had 2 babies in a bathtub, and a stranger at the door. Pain could wait its turn. The woman knocked again, harder. You are harboring unregistered bloodline minors subject to council protection. There it is, I said. We have authority. You have a fake badge and bad manners. The keycard beeped. The lock clicked. The door opened half an inch before the chain caught. My heartbeat slammed once, hard. The woman outside pushed, testing it. I moved before I could think, planting one foot against the base of the chair and my shoulder near the door. The gap widened enough for me to see one flat gray eye. Mrs. Woods, she said, voice stripped of softness, step away from the door. My name is Alma Wells. You carry Woods heirs. I carried my children. I birthed them. I feed them with my body. If you want heirs, go make your own. The man behind her muttered, We don't have time. The woman reached through the gap with a thin metal tool. The babies stopped breathing. Not literally. I knew that a second later. But the room went so quiet it felt as if the whole world had held its breath. No crying, no whimpering, no tiny restless sounds from the bathroom. A warmth opened in my chest, low and steady, like a coal protected beneath ash. The charm in my palm heated. The air shifted. The hallway light flickered. Once. Twice. The woman's hand froze. I could feel them then. Not just my babies, but farther out. A little boy in the next room, asleep between parents who had argued before midnight. A toddler 2 doors down with fever dreams. The clerk downstairs terrified behind the counter. Their fear brushed against me like small fingers. And I gathered it in, not into myself, around them, a shelter. The chain rattled violently as the woman shoved again. I leaned into the door and spoke through the crack. You came to the wrong room. Her face changed. For the first time she looked uncertain. Then she bared her teeth. Not wolf, not quite human either. Just ugly. Take the door. The man stepped forward. I did not scream. I said his name. Ethan. Not loudly, not even as a plea. I said it into the room, into the bond, into the place between my fear and his. The answer came almost instantly. His voice sounded from the other side of the hallway, rough and controlled. Alma. The woman spun. I pressed my hand harder to the door, breath catching. Ethan did not break through. He did not throw himself between me and the world without asking. Even now, with danger on the threshold, and his children inside, he waited on the other side of my boundary. Do you want me there? He asked. My throat tightened so sharply I almost could not answer. Yes. The hallway exploded. Not with chaos, with precision. A snarl, a hard crack against the wall. The man in coveralls cried out. The woman cursed, and something silver flashed through the gap before Ethan caught her wrist. The scent of burned skin hit the room. Silver. My wolfmate hissed in pain, but did not let go. Drop it, Ethan said. Council authority. He slammed her hand into the wall. The blade clattered onto the carpet. I said, drop it. Daniel's voice came next, cold as iron. On your knees. The woman laughed once, breathless and furious. You have no idea what Vale will do. Vale can get in line, Ethan said. I slid the chain free with shaking fingers and opened the door only as far as my body allowed. Ethan stood in the hall barefoot, in dark clothes hastily thrown on, hair damp from rain. His right hand was burned where the silver had kissed him. His eyes were wolf gold, but he held himself still. The fake social worker knelt against the wall with Daniel behind her, one hand twisted high between her shoulder blades. The maintenance man lay face down near the ice machine, groaning into the carpet. Dr. Brooks came up the stairwell carrying a medical bag and looking like a man ready to commit several crimes for health reasons. Ethan's gaze flicked over me once. My open robe, the milk stains, the blood I could feel soaking through despite the pad. My bare feet braced on dirty hotel carpet. The charm clenched in my fist. His jaw tightened, but he did not reach for me. Are they hurt? He asked. No. Are you? I almost lied. Then I was too tired. I don't know. His face shifted. Pain, anger, love. Each one held back because I'd not invited him closer. Can I come in? He asked. The words nearly broke me more than the silver blade had. I stepped back. Only because they tried to take my children, I said. Not because I forgive you. Ethan lowered his head once. I know. He entered slowly, like the room belonged to me because it did. Dr. Brooks followed after I nodded, already asking questions in a gentle voice as he went to the bathroom and checked the twins where they lay silent and wide-eyed in the tub. They're all right, he said after a moment. Startled, but all right. My knees gave a warning tremble. Ethan saw it. His hands flexed at his sides. Alma. You can take him, I said, because my son had begun to fuss again, and because Ethan looked like standing there without touching his child might kill him. He moved carefully, lifting our son from the towels, with a tenderness that cut through my anger before I could stop it. The baby settled against his chest with a sigh. My daughter chose that moment to wail. Of course, I murmured, picking her up. You waited for your brother to get comfortable before objecting. For half a minute the room was only us. Messy, exhausted, wounded, alive. Ethan with silver burns on his hand and spit up on his shirt from earlier. Me with milk down my robe and grief still lodged under my ribs. Our babies between us, refusing to care about council law. Then Daniel appeared in the doorway. His expression had changed. Ethan, he said, you need to come into the hall. Ethan turned, our son still against his chest. What is it? Daniel looked at me first. That was how I knew it was bad. A man stepped into view behind him. Wet coat, dark hair threaded with rain, a fading bruise along his jaw. Malcolm Reeves looked thinner than the last time I had seen him, but his eyes were still sharp enough to cut. Ethan's growl filled the room. I tightened my hold on my daughter. Why is he here? Malcolm lifted both hands, showing empty palms. Because Vale is cleaning up loose ends, he said. His gaze moved from me to Ethan. And because there is one truth left that neither of you can afford to learn too late. Ethan went utterly still. Malcolm's mouth tightened. Jessica Woods is alive. Jessica Woods is alive. The room did not move, but everything inside it seemed to shift out of place. Ethan stood with our son against his chest, one burned hand cupping that tiny back, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked young. Not weak, not broken. Young as if some buried part of him had lifted its head at the sound of his mother's name. No, he said. Malcolm's mouth tightened. Yes. My mother is dead. That is what Vale needed you to believe. The baby fussed, a small sound against Ethan's shirt. Ethan looked down automatically, settling him with a careful hand, but his eyes had gone distant. I knew that look. I had worn it myself when my grandmother's silence split open in front of me. A grave opening. A childhood rearranging itself. I shifted my daughter higher against my shoulder and felt the damp warmth of milk spreading through my robe. My body was aching, tender, furious with me for standing too long. I did not care. Where is she? I asked. Ethan turned to me. Alma. I looked at him. He stopped. One breath passed between us, raw and full of everything he had almost said. Then he corrected himself. If you want to see her, I'll take you. Brooks rides with us. That hurt too, but differently, softer, like a bandage pressed over a place still bleeding. Malcolm watched the exchange with too much intelligence for a man I did not trust. She's at an old Ironclaw safe house outside Millfield. I moved her before Vale's people could. He'll come looking soon. Daniel cursed under his breath. Of course he will. Dr. Brooks stepped closer, his face drawn with concern. Alma, you should not be traveling anywhere. You are 2 days postpartum. I am aware, I said. My hips have been sending formal complaints. This is not a joke. No, it is not. I met his eyes. But if the woman who killed my mother is alive, I am not going to lie in a bed and wait for another man to decide when I am strong enough to hear the truth. Brooks sighed like every doctor in the world whose patient had chosen stubbornness over medical advice. Fine, he said. But if you start bleeding heavily, fainting, or shaking worse than you already are, I reserve the right to be a complete dick about it. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Fair. We left the hotel in pieces of rain and blue-black morning. Sophie met us behind the building with clean blankets, a diaper bag Grace must have packed in a rage, and eyes swollen from crying. She did not ask if I was all right. That was one mercy of women who knew better. She only wrapped her arms around me carefully and whispered, "I'm here." For a second, I let my forehead rest against hers. Then my daughter made an impatient sound between us. Sophie sniffed. Bossy already. She comes by it honestly. The safe house sat at the end of a gravel road, half hidden by winter trees and weeds grown tall around the porch. It had once been white, but weather had stripped it down to gray boards and rusted gutters. One upstairs window was cracked. The place looked abandoned, which meant it probably had more locks and wards than Vanguard's front gate. Daniel cleared the rooms first. Grace went straight to the kitchen as if danger could be solved by finding a stove. Dr. Brooks chose the back bedroom for the babies, muttering about drafts and dust, while Sophie spread fresh sheets over a narrow mattress. I stood in the doorway with both twins close, unable to hand them over. Ethan came beside me but did not crowd. "They'll be guarded," he said. "I know." Daniel is outside, Grace is inside. Sophie will scream loud enough to wake Kentucky if anyone looks wrong. I know. Still, my arms would not loosen. My son slept hard, mouth open, one fist curled beneath his chin. My daughter blinked up at me with solemn, dark eyes that looked too wise for a person who had been in the world less than 3 days. Sophie reached out slowly. "I won't let them out of my sight." My throat closed. "I need you to bring them to me if they cry," I said. "Even if I'm in the middle of talking. Even if Ethan says wait. Even if anybody says anything." Ethan's jaw shifted, but he nodded. "Especially then." I looked at him. He held my gaze. No defense, no wound displayed for sympathy. Just the quiet evidence of a man learning where not to stand. I kissed each baby's forehead before letting Sophie take my daughter and Dr. Brooks take my son. My arms felt wrong the second they were empty. Malcolm led us to the cellar door. The stairs groaned beneath our feet. Ethan went first, not because he ordered it, but because there might be danger below, and we both knew I was not in any shape to wrestle monsters. I followed close enough to see the tension in his shoulders. At the bottom, a single bulb hung from a cord, swinging gently. The woman in the chair lifted her head. Jessica Woods was not the ghost I had imagined. She was older, scarred, and thin, in a way that looked earned by years of hiding badly. Gray threaded through dark hair cut blunt at her jaw. A long scar pulled from the corner of her mouth down toward her neck, twisting her expression even at rest. Her hands were bound in front of her, but she held them still in her lap, as if she had already decided she deserved the rope. Her eyes went to Ethan first. Something passed through them. Not joy, not relief. Pain, maybe. Recognition sharpened by shame. "Ethan," she said. He did not answer. I stepped around him. Jessica's gaze shifted to me, and she knew me. I saw it happen. Her breath caught, shallow and ugly. "You look like her," she whispered. My fingers curled around the Wells charm at my throat. "Did you kill my mother?" Ethan made a low sound behind me. Jessica did not look away. "Yes." No excuses, no softening, just the word. It entered me cleanly and left nothing clean behind. For a moment I could hear only the old house above us, the faint creak of boards, someone moving in the kitchen, rain ticking against the small cellar window. My body, traitorous and alive, let milk down at the same time grief rose up. Warmth spread through my bra while my stomach cramped, and I hated that the world could keep being physical when my heart had stopped. How? I asked. Ethan moved closer, then stopped himself. Jessica swallowed. I was sent to retrieve you. As a baby. Yes. By Vale? By the council. Vale gave the order. Her bound fingers flexed once. They wanted Wells' blood under control. They said sanctuary women could bend wolf children, weaken alpha lines, turn packs against their own leaders. They said your mother was hiding dangerous blood. My mother was hiding children. Jessica's scar pulled tight as her mouth trembled. I know that now. You knew it then, I said quietly. You just called it something else. She flinched. Good. I wanted the truth, but I did not have to make it gentle. Jessica looked down at her hands. Lydia refused to hand you over. She had you wrapped in a yellow blanket. You were asleep at first. Then the shouting woke you. My name sounded different when she said it. Lydia. Not a story. Not a photograph. A woman with arms and breath, and a baby in a yellow blanket. She told me, Jessica continued, voice roughening, my daughter is not a well for wolves to drink from. My knees weakened. Ethan's hand hovered near my elbow. I let it stay there in the air between us, close but not claiming. What did you do? I asked. She ran for the back door. I caught her before she reached it. We struggled. Jessica closed her eyes. She had a kitchen knife. I had claws. The cellar seemed to tilt. When Eleanor came, Jessica said, Lydia was on the floor. You were under the table, screaming. Eleanor hit me with an iron poker hard enough to split my shoulder. I ran because I was a coward, and because I had failed the council, and because your grandmother looked like she would drag me to hell with her bare hands. A sound left me. Not a sob. Something smaller. Jessica opened her eyes again. Your mother died with your name in her mouth. There are sentences that do not merely wound. They move into the body and build a room there. I pressed one hand over my stomach, where my children had lived, and tried to imagine my mother on a floor, bleeding, calling for me, calling to me, loving me all the way out of the world. Ethan whispered my name. I shook my head once. Not because I wanted him gone, because if he touched me right then, I might fall apart before I finished. Jessica leaned forward as far as the rope allowed. The council lied to me. They told us Wells' blood would destroy wolf children. They told us. I do not care what lie made you raise your hand, I said. Her mouth closed. My mother is still dead. The words steadied me. Not because they made anything better, but because they were solid beneath my feet. You do not get to put a lie on one side of the scale and my mother's throat on the other, I said. There is no balance for that. Jessica bowed her head. I have names, she whispered. Orders, dates, places they kept the children. Vale's signature on enough paper to bury him, if anyone lives long enough to read it. A crash sounded upstairs. All three of us turned. Then my daughter screamed. Not a hungry cry, not tired. Fear pierced through the house and slammed into my chest like a blade. Alma, Ethan said. I was already moving. Pain tore through my hips as I climbed the stairs. Ethan passed me halfway up, fast and silent, wolf gold in his eyes. Another crash shook the hall above. Someone shouted. Grace cursed with enough force to peel paint. Then my son wailed. I reached the back bedroom and found the window shattered, curtains blowing in the rain. Sophie was on the floor, blood at her temple, one arm reaching toward the overturned cradle. Dr. Brooks struggled to rise near the wall. Grace stood in the doorway with a kitchen knife in one hand and murder in her eyes. Ethan had our son. He was screaming against Ethan's chest. But the other blanket, the small one with the crescent moon stitched at the corner, lay open on the bed. Warm, empty. My daughter was gone. At first I could not scream. The room had narrowed to one small shape on the bed. A blanket. Blue-white cotton. Crescent moon stitched crooked in one corner because Sophie had done it by hand, and cursed through the whole thing. It lay open where my daughter should have been. Warm in the middle, folded slightly where her tiny body had rested. The window curtains snapped in the rain. Glass glittered across the floor. My son wailed against Ethan's chest with his whole body, fists clenched, face screwed tight in misery. Sophie was trying to sit up, blood sliding from her hairline toward her jaw. Dr. Brooks braced one hand against the wall, blinking hard like the room would not hold still. Grace stood in the doorway with a kitchen knife and a look on her face that made me understand why old stories feared mothers and cooks equally, but I only saw the blanket. I stepped toward it. Someone said my name. Maybe Ethan. Maybe Grace. Maybe God. I touched the small hollow where my daughter's head had been. Still warm. Still smelling faintly of milk. My knees hit the floor before I knew I had fallen. Then the sound came out of me. It tore through my throat, through the floorboards, through every closed room in that old safe house. It was not a word. It was not even a cry I recognized as my own. Something in the walls answered it. The hanging light swung hard, though no wind reached that corner. My son stopped crying for one stunned breath, then started again, sharper than before. Ethan moved. I felt him come toward me before I saw him. That pull in the bond straining with terror and rage. Then he stopped himself so suddenly. His boots scraped against broken glass. Alma! I turned my head. He stood 2 steps away with our son tucked safely against him, his burned hand shaking where it supported that tiny back. His eyes were bright wolf gold, but his voice was human. Careful. Wrecked. Tell me what to do! The words landed differently than every order I had feared from him. Not stay here. Not let me handle this. Not you're too weak. He looked like a man being flayed alive, and still he did not reach for my grief and make it his command. My hand closed around the empty blanket. Help me get my baby back. Ethan's face changed. Not softened. Focused. Yes. He turned toward Daniel, who appeared in the hall with rain in his hair and blood on one sleeve. No one leaves the property. Check every tree line, every ditch, every tire mark. I want scent teams north and west first. They came through the window. They didn't vanish. Daniel nodded once and was gone. Brooks, Ethan said. On Sophie, Dr. Brooks answered already, his voice rough. Then Alma. Don't argue with me. I'm not the one you need to worry about. Dr. Brooks crouched beside Sophie. She hissed when he touched her temple, then tried to slap his hand away. I'm fine. You are bleeding on my shoe, he said. That is usually my first sign someone is not fine. Sophie's eyes found mine. Tears gathered, spilling before she could blink them back. Alma, I had her. I swear I had her. 1 second she was right there, and then the glass... I know. My voice scraped raw, but I made it gentle for her because she was still reaching toward the bed, like she might pull my daughter back through sheer guilt. Sophie, I know. They hit me. Her mouth twisted. The dick came through the window, and I tried. You protected her as long as you could. It wasn't long enough. No, it had not been. But cruelty would not bring my child home. I crawled closer and took her bloody hand. You are not the person who stole my baby. She broke then, a quiet sob shaking her shoulders. Grace made a low, murderous sound. Point me at the person who did. The back door slammed open downstairs. Every wolf in the house reacted. Ethan turned, body angling between the doorway and me without stepping over the line I had drawn. His growl rolled through the room. Then Eleanor's voice cut through the noise. Where is Alma? My grandmother came up the stairs faster than a woman her age should have been able to move. Her coat hung crooked over a nightgown, gray hair escaping its pins, boots unlaced. Rain clung to her sleeves. She stopped in the doorway. Her eyes went to the bed, to the blanket in my hand. All the strength left her face. Oh, baby, she whispered. I stood too quickly. Pain flashed low through my body, bright and punishing, and warm blood shifted between my thighs. I ignored it. You knew. Eleanor looked at me. You knew what hunted us, I said. You knew who would come. You knew they wanted Wells' blood and wolf children and anything they could label, cage, and own. Her mouth trembled once. I held up the blanket. You taught me how to survive, but you stole the map. You let me walk blind. The room went quiet except for the rain and my son's tired whimpering. Eleanor did not lift her chin. She did not reach for pride. She did not wrap herself in all the suffering she had carried like it made a throne. Yes, she said. I did. That hurt worse than denial. And I am sorry. My throat worked. Sorry was not enough. Sorry was a cup of water against a burning house. I don't forgive you. I know. I don't even want to look at you right now. I know that too. But she stayed where she was, hands open at her sides, letting my anger strike her without ducking. Then her gaze dropped to the charm at my throat. But if you want to find that baby, she said quietly, you need what I should have taught you years ago. Ethan's head snapped toward her. What does that mean? It means wolf scent won't be enough. Not if Vale's people took her. They'll use ash, iron, silver smoke, whatever ugly little tricks those council bastards have hoarded. Eleanor looked at me. But she is blood of your blood. Milk of your body. Wells of wells. My hand found the charm. It was hot. Not warm from my skin. Hot like it had been sitting in sunlight, though the room was full of storm. Ethan stepped closer, still holding our son. Alma? I feel something, I whispered. Eleanor crossed the room slowly. Sit down before you fall down. I can stand. You can also bleed to death from stubbornness. Sit. Any other night, I might have argued. Tonight, I sat on the edge of the bed with the empty blanket across my lap and broken glass shining near my feet. Ethan knelt in front of me. Can I give him to you? He asked. For 1 second, anger and love twisted so tightly in my chest, I could not separate them. He should not have had to ask to hand me my own son. He asked anyway, because he understood the shape of the wound now. I nodded. He placed our son against my bare chest with care that made my eyes sting. The baby rooted instantly, mouth searching, furious at the interruption to his terrible night. I opened my robe enough for him to latch, my fingers clumsy from shock. He found me and began to nurse. The pull was sharp enough to make me gasp. Milk let down hard on the other side, soaking the cloth beneath my daughter's blanket. Eleanor's voice softened. There. Don't fight it. I'm not doing anything. Yes, you are. You are calling what belongs to you. The charm burned brighter. The room fell away by degrees. Not gone. I still heard Sophie sniffling while Brooks cleaned her head. Still smelled rain, blood, smoke, milk. Still felt Ethan near my knees, one hand resting on the mattress but not touching me. Beneath all of that, another thread stretched, thin, terrified, alive. My breath caught. She's crying. Ethan went utterly still. Where? I don't know. I pressed the blanket harder against my stomach. Cold. There's metal. Something bitter. Silver, maybe. Eleanor closed her eyes. Can you feel direction? I shook my head, then stopped. Not north like a compass. Not east like a road. It was deeper than that. A tug under the ribs. A hook set in blood. She's being carried, I whispered. Fast, not in arms. A car. No, van. The floor is shaking beneath her. Ethan rose. Daniel. His voice cracked through the house. Boots thundered below. From the hallway, Malcolm appeared with 2 wolves gripping his arms, his expression grim. If they have the child, they'll take her to Vale's old examination ward. Not the council hall. Too public. Where? Ethan demanded. Malcolm looked at me, not him. North of Millfield. Beneath the closed courthouse annex. There are cells under it. Grace spat a curse so vicious Dr. Brooks paused mid-bandage. Ethan's voice dropped. You knew that and waited to say it. I was being dragged out of the cellar by men who wanted to rip my throat out, Malcolm said. Forgive delay. I won't, I said. His mouth closed. Good. I stood with my son still latched, because apparently motherhood did not pause for war. We go now. Dr. Brooks turned. Alma. No. You are postpartum, bleeding, exhausted, and nursing 2 newborns. 1 newborn, I said, and the words nearly broke me. The other is in the hands of a council prick who calls babies assets. Ethan looked at Brooks. Keep her standing. Brooks swore under his breath. That is not a medical plan. It is the only one we have. My son pulled off and began to cry again. I tucked him against my shoulder and patted his back with a hand that would not stop shaking. Ethan came close enough that I felt the warmth of him. Can I? He held up his coat. I looked at him for one breath, then nodded. He wrapped it around my shoulders without brushing my skin more than necessary. It smelled like rain, smoke, and him. My body wanted to lean. My pride refused. Somewhere between those 2 things, I stayed upright. We bring him, I said. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he did not say no. He's tied to her, I continued. I can feel him answering. If I leave him, I lose half the thread. Fear moved through his eyes. Then he nodded. Then no one gets within 10 feet of either of you. Eleanor reached for the charm, stopping just short of touching it. Alma, listen to me. If her fear changes, you tell us. I looked down at the crescent and the well glowing against my warm brown skin. My daughter's cry trembled through me again, smaller this time. Thin, hoarse, then suddenly, nothing. No wail, no thread of panic, no tiny desperate sound reaching for my milk, my arms, my heartbeat. The silence hit so hard I nearly dropped my son. Ethan caught my elbow with one hand, and this time I let him. Alma? I could not breathe. Far away beneath stone and silver, my daughter's cry had stopped.
The moment Alma whispered, she stopped crying. My wolf went savage. Not loud, not wild in a way anyone could see. It went deep, down into the oldest part of me, where instinct had no language, except mine and blood, and kill whatever took her. Alma's knees dipped. I caught her elbow because she let me. Because if she had pulled away, I would have opened my hand and let her stand on her own, even if it gutted me. Our son stirred beneath my coat, tucked against her chest, alive and warm and angry. His sister was somewhere north of us, wrapped in silence. Still with me? I asked. Alma lifted her eyes. They were wet, but not broken. Drive. So we drove. Daniel took the wheel because if I had done it, I would have put the truck through a wall. I sat in the back beside Alma, close enough to feel the heat of her shoulder, far enough not to crowd her. Dr. Brooks sat on her other side, one hand braced near her knee in case she swayed, his bag open at his feet. You tell me if the bleeding worsens, he said. Alma did not look away from the rain-streaked window. If I bleed to death before I get my daughter back, you have permission to call me unreasonable. Brooks muttered, I already had that permission. A sound almost came out of me. Not a laugh. I did not have one in me. But Alma's mouth moved faintly, and that small sign of her still being herself kept my claws under my skin. Behind us, 2 more vehicles followed. Vanguard wolves, Grace, Sophie, despite the bandage around her temple, and every order to stay behind. Jessica Wood sat in the last truck between 2 guards, hands bound, face turned toward the glass. My mother, not dead, not forgiven, the woman whose claws had opened Lydia Wells' throat and torn a hole through Alma's life, before Alma had ever learned to speak. She was also the only person who knew the way into Vale's hidden ward. The truth was an ugly dick like that. It never arrived clean. Alma's hand shifted near mine. I looked down. Her fingers, dark and steady despite the tremor in them, hovered over my burned knuckles. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "Not enough." She looked at me then. "That is a stupid answer." "Yes." Her fingers touched my wrist. Not my hand. Not forgiveness. Just contact. "I need your head clear when we get there," she said. My wolf quieted around her voice. "You'll have it. I mean it, Ethan. Do not turn into what they expect. They want the alpha monster. They want you bloody and stupid so they can say they were right." I swallowed the taste of silver still sitting on my tongue. "Where do you want me?" Her gaze flicked to the bundle at her chest, then back to me. Between them and the door. I nodded once. Done. The old courthouse annex squatted behind a rusted chain-link fence north of Millfield, its yellow brick dark with rain. The public sign out front said, "Closed for renovation," though no worker had touched the place in years. Weeds grew through the concrete. Boarded windows stared down at us, like blind eyes. Jessica led us around back to a service entrance half hidden beneath ivy. Daniel kept a gun trained on her spine. "One wrong move." Jessica did not look at him. "If I run, shoot me." "Don't tempt me," I said. She glanced at me then, and for 1 second I saw something raw move through her scarred face. Regret maybe, fear. It did not matter enough to name. She keyed in an old code. The panel blinked red once, then green. Before Daniel pulled the door open, Jessica reached into her coat with 2 fingers. Every wolf around her tensed. "Slow," Daniel warned. She withdrew a folded oilskin packet and held it out. "Names," she said. "Dates, retrieval orders, holding sites. Children taken from Blackwater, Ironclaw, Red Fern, 3 human families in Kentucky, and Lydia Wells' file." Her voice scraped on the last name. "Vale signed enough of it to bury him." Daniel took the packet without lowering his weapon. Jessica looked past him to Alma. "If I die downstairs, use that." Alma's face did not soften. I was going to. For the first time since leaving the safe house, Jessica almost smiled. Then the door opened. The air below smelled of bleach, wet stone, old fear, and silver smoke. It crawled into my nose and burned down the back of my throat. My wolf recoiled, then shoved forward again, snarling. Alma came down the stairs behind me with our son pressed close. Brooks on one side and Eleanor on the other. Her Wells charm glowed against her warm brown skin, not bright like a lantern, but steady, like a coal that refused to die. Halfway down, the first child began to cry. Then another, then more. The sound came through the walls, thin, frightened, muffled behind metal doors. Alma stopped. I turned. "Alma?" She held up one hand. No one moved. Her eyes closed. Our son whimpered once against her chest. She drew a breath so deep, I felt it through the bond, felt it settle somewhere beneath the terror, beneath the rage. The hallway changed. Not with flame, not with force. Warmth moved through the underground corridor like a kitchen fire in January, like quilts pulled over shaking shoulders, like a mother's palm pressed to a fevered brow. The silver smoke thinned. The lights overhead flickered. Behind the doors, the crying softened. One by one, frightened children quieted. Even my wolves lowered their heads. Eleanor whispered, "Sanctuary." Alma opened her eyes. "They're this way." Daniel moved first, his team splitting with practiced precision. Doors were forced, locks snapped. Children spilled into the hall. wolf children with glowing eyes, human toddlers in oversized shirts, a little girl with iron claw scent clinging to her hair, two boys who clutched each other and stared at us like we might turn into another nightmare. Sophie stepped forward, pale bandage stark against her curls, arms open. "Come on, ducklings," she said, voice shaking but warm. "With me, nobody gets left." One small boy bared his teeth at her. Sophie sniffed. "Good. Keep that energy for the council pricks, but walk while you do it." Grace came out of an abandoned staff kitchen with a cast iron skillet in one hand. I stared at her. "You brought that?" She gave me a look that would have curdled milk. I was told there might be trouble. A council guard rounded the corner and grabbed for one of the children. Grace hit him so hard the sound rang off the tile. He dropped. She stepped over him. Trouble found me. We found my daughter in the examination ward. The room was too white, too bright. Metal cabinets lined the walls. A glass bassinet sat beneath a warmer, and inside it, my child lay swaddled too tightly, a thin silver cuff locked around one ankle. Her mouth was open. No sound came out. For half a second, I stopped being Alpha. I stopped being a man. I became only a father, looking at a silent newborn beneath council lights. Alma made a sound beside me, soft enough to break a bone. Counselor Vale stood near the bassinet in a gray suit without a drop of rain on him. "Alpha Woods," he said. "Luna Alma. You should have presented the assets voluntarily." Alma's head turned slowly. Even I felt the air sharpen. "My children," she said, "are not assets." Vale smiled. "Rare bloodlines belong under protection." "No," Alma replied. "They belong in arms that love them." I moved toward him. Alma's hand caught my wrist. "Not hard. Enough." "Door," she said. My whole body rebelled. My daughter was 10 feet away. But Alma had told me where to stand, so I stood at the door. Daniel and Malcolm took the left side of the room. Jessica moved to the control panel, hands still bound, and slammed her elbow into the glass cover until it cracked. Vale's smile vanished. "Jessica." She did not look at him. "I am Jessica Woods, former council enforcer. I testify that Counselor Adrian Vale ordered the retrieval of sanctuary blood children from 1979 through the present, including Alma Wells, daughter of Lydia Wells." The panel sparked. The cuff on my daughter's ankle clicked open. Vale lunged. I caught the first guard by the throat and drove him into the door frame. Another came low with a silver blade. I twisted, felt heat slice across my ribs, and broke his wrist before the poison could go deep. Alma reached the bassinet. She lifted our daughter with both hands, bringing that tiny body to her chest. "Come on, baby," she whispered. "Mama's here." For one endless breath, nothing happened. Then my daughter gasped. Her cry came thin, furious, and alive. Our son answered beneath Alma's coat. The whole ward shuddered. Sanctuary fire rolled outward from Alma in a silent wave. Cabinets burst open. Silver instruments rattled across trays. Every child in the corridors went quiet, not from fear this time, but from peace. Vale pulled a silver injector from his sleeve and aimed for Alma's back. Jessica stepped between them. The needle drove into her shoulder. She staggered, teeth clenched, but stayed on her feet. I had Vale against the wall before he drew another breath. Jessica slid down beside the cabinet, one hand pressed to the smoking wound. Her eyes found Alma. "I do not ask forgiveness," she said. Alma held both our children close, tears on her face and steel in her spine. "Good," she answered, "because I do not have it to give you." Then the reinforcements came. Too many. Boots thundered down the corridor. Silver smoke flooded under the door. Daniel shouted orders. Sophie herded children toward the rear tunnel, Grace swinging that skillet like judgment had finally grown a handle. I planted myself in the doorway. No one passed me. The first wave hit hard. Claws, blades, teeth. I fought with everything my father had taught me and everything Alma had given me reason to live for. Silver burned across my shoulder. A hook caught my side. I tore free and stayed upright. Vale, pinned beneath Malcolm's knee, lifted his bloody mouth and smiled at me. "Kneel, Woods," he hissed. "Your line was made to serve the council." The word struck like a command buried in my bones. My wolf faltered. For one terrible second, I felt it. An old chain around the Woods' blood, cold and deep, forged long before me by fear, obedience, and the sins my family had carried like inheritance. My knees buckled. Behind me, Alma called my name. Not as a plea, as a tether. Our son cried. Our daughter answered. Their tiny heartbeats struck through the bond, one after the other, joined by Alma's fire wrapping around my failing wolf. The silver in my ribs burned white hot. I fell to one knee in the doorway, blood spreading beneath my hand. And in the split second before darkness rose, something old and cruel inside the Woods' blood snapped.
The curse did not break with thunder. It broke like a held breath leaving a locked room. One moment Ethan was on his knees in the doorway, blood spreading beneath his hand, silver smoke crawling around his shoulders. Next, something cold and ancient tore loose inside the bond between us. I felt it go. Not from my body. From his. A black hook pulled out of the Woods' name. Ethan made no sound. That frightened me more than a scream would have. Ethan. He tried to lift his head. Door. Damn the door. I shifted both babies tighter against me and dropped beside him before Dr. Brooks could tell me not to. My daughter whimpered against my chest, alive and warm, her tiny mouth rooting blindly near the edge of my torn robe. My son answered with a thin, offended cry, as if he had opinions about being born into a family this unreasonable. Ethan's eyes found mine. Wolf gold flickered there, dimming and returning. Children, he rasped. Safe. My voice shook, but I made it hold. Because you held the door. Now look at me. Blood slid between his fingers. The silver wound at his ribs smoked through his torn shirt, and every part of me wanted to put my hand over it, as if love could plug a hole. Maybe it could. Maybe not. I leaned closer anyway. You do not get to die after learning how to ask permission, I whispered. That would be rude as hell. His mouth twitched. Dr. Brooks hit the floor beside us with his bag already open. Move your hand, Alpha. Ethan did not. I touched his wrist. Let him help. Only then did Ethan obey. Behind us, the corridor had become chaos with direction. Daniel shouted orders. Sophie gathered children with her bandaged head held high, and one arm around a little boy who kept growling at anyone too tall. Grace stood over a fallen guard with her cast-iron skillet dangling from one hand like the Lord had personally assigned her vengeance. Counselor Vale was on his stomach beneath Malcolm's boot, silver cuffs locked around his wrists. He was still smiling. The nasty dick. You think this ends with me? Vale lifted his face from the tile, blood bright on his teeth. Sanctuary blood always draws wolves. I looked at him over Ethan's shoulder. No, I said. It draws children who need somewhere safe. Vale's smile thinned. Across the room, Jessica Woods sat slumped against a cabinet with a silver injector still buried in her shoulder. Her face had gone gray beneath its scars, but her eyes stayed open. I gave Daniel the packet, she said. I know. Use it. I will. Her gaze flicked to my daughter, then away, as if even looking too long was something she had not earned. I do not ask forgiveness. she murmured. The words were quieter than before. I held my children closer. Good, I answered, because I still do not have it to give you. She nodded once, accepting the blow without flinching. That did not make us whole. It did not bring my mother back. It did not clean blood from history. It only meant the truth had finally stopped hiding. The weeks after the raid passed in pieces. Vale's testimony packet spread faster than the council could bury it. Names, dates, orders, Lydia Wells, other mothers, other children, Vanguard, Ironclaw, Kentucky, Ohio. A map of theft dressed up as protection. By the 7th day, 3 counselors had been stripped of power. By the 9th, Vanguard land was declared protected, sanctuary, ground. By the 10th, Doctor. Brooks told me if I tried to attend one more formal hearing with stitches still healing, he would be a dick in writing, and I believed him. So I stayed in bed more than I liked. New motherhood did not pause for politics. My daughter screamed whenever I dared put her down. My son slept beautifully until the exact moment I closed my eyes. Milk leaked through every clean shirt I owned. Grace fed me bowls of stew, biscuits thick with butter, fried apples, greens with vinegar, and once an entire plate of cornbread because I looked at it too long. Ethan healed slower than he wanted. He came to the nursery every evening and stopped at the threshold. Every time. Can I come in? Sometimes I said yes. Sometimes I said, not tonight. He never argued. That was how trust began to regrow. Not like lightning, not like romance in storybooks, but like a seed under dark soil. Quiet, slow, needing more than one good day. One afternoon, when the babies were 6 weeks old and the snow had begun to melt in muddy strips along the paths, Ethan asked if I would walk with him. Walk where? I asked, suspicious because I had learned alpha men could make even fresh air sound like a strategy. To show you something. That is not an answer. No, he said. But it is the only one I have. I studied him over my daughter's fuzzy head. You are getting very annoying with this patient honesty. His eyes warmed. I'm trying. I noticed. He carried our son. I carried our daughter. Neither of us mentioned how natural it looked until the silence did it for us. The house stood beyond the east pasture, where the woods curved around a small rise of land. It had a wide porch, new white railings, and a roof the color of rain clouds. Someone had planted early bulbs along the walkway. The garden beds were empty, but waiting, dark soil turned and ready. My steps slowed. Ethan did not push me forward. Inside, sunlight lay across polished floorboards. There was a kitchen with yellow curtains, a front room big enough for children to leave toys everywhere. A nursery painted soft green, with 2 cradles beneath the window, and a rocking chair placed where morning light would reach. I stood in the doorway and could not speak. Ethan reached inside his coat, held out an envelope. What is that? The deed. I looked at him. His face was serious, but not hard. It's in your name. The room went very still. This house is yours, whether you come back to me or not, he said. No bond, no title, no debt. Yours. If you want to raise them here without me, I'll protect the land and stay out of your way. If you want to leave Vanguard someday, I'll help you sell it. If you want to burn it down, I'll get Grace to bring matches. A laugh broke out of me before I could stop it, wet and unsteady. She would enjoy that too much. She would. I looked back at the nursery. The dream I had once carried felt so small compared to everything we had survived. A house, a husband, children, peace. Simple things were never simple when people had bled to make room for them. And if I come back to you? I asked. Ethan's throat moved. Then I spend the rest of my life proving you were safe to choose me. I touched the edge of the deed. I am not promising easy. No. I will still get angry. You should. And if you ever decide truth is too heavy for me again, I won't. I met his eyes. He did not look away. Slowly, I placed my hand over his where it rested near our son's back. His fingers flexed once beneath mine. but he let me decide the pressure. "I might come home," I said. His voice roughened. "I'll leave the porch light on." Eleanor came 3 days later. She stood in my kitchen holding a covered dish like a shield. Her hair was pinned neatly, but her eyes looked tired, in the way grief made a person tired even after sleeping. "I called silence protection because I was scared," she said before I could speak. "But I stole your truth, baby. I know that now." The babies slept in a basket near the stove, warm and milk-drunk. I looked at my grandmother and saw the woman who had raised me, the woman who had lied, the woman who had buried her daughter and carried me away from blood. All of her stood there together. "I am still angry," I said. "I know. I may be angry for a long time. I earned that." My daughter stirred, stretching one tiny brown fist above her head. Eleanor's face folded with love she did not dare reach for. I sighed. "You can hold her." My grandmother's lips trembled. "But Grandma?" "Yes." "If you lie to me again, I will let Grace make you unsalted soup for a year." Eleanor blinked. Then she laughed and cried at the same time. "Cruel child. Raised by you." She held my daughter like a prayer. The naming ceremony took place under the full moon at Vanguard. Children gathered first, because children always knew when something important belonged partly to them. They lined the courtyard steps in coats and blankets, whispering, fidgeting, peeking at the babies. The pack came after. Then the wolves knelt. Not to Ethan. Not to power. To sanctuary. I stood beside him with both babies in my arms. Our son opened his eyes, and for one impossible second, gold flashed bright as sunrise. "Caleb Wells Woods," I said. The pack answered his name softly. My daughter slept through her turn, stubborn and unimpressed by ceremony. I smiled down at her. Lydia Grace Wells Woods. Eleanor covered her mouth. Grace openly sobbed and threatened anyone who looked at her. Ethan's hand brushed mine. He did not take it. I gave it to him. His fingers closed around mine carefully, reverently, as if my choice was not a thing he could hold too tightly. For the first time in generations, the Wells women did not hide from wolves. We opened the door. We held our children close. We called the pack home. Then my charm burned hot against my chest. Every child in the courtyard turned toward the eastern woods. At the tree line stood a little girl no older than 7, soaked to the bone, clutching a baby wrapped in a gray blanket. Around her neck hung a crescent moon and a well. She looked straight at me and whispered, "Are you Alma Wells? My mama said to find you before the black coats came." For one breath, no one moved. The courtyard remained silver under the moon, full of kneeling wolves, sleeping babies, and the soft hush that had followed my daughter's name. Then the little girl at the tree line took one trembling step forward. She was soaked clear through. Rainwater dripped from the ends of her braids and ran down her cheeks like tears she was too tired to shed. The baby in her arms made one small, broken sound beneath the gray blanket. Around the child's neck the charm glinted. A crescent moon. A well. My hand tightened around Ethan's. He did not move ahead of me. He did not command the wolves forward. He only leaned close enough that his voice warmed my ear. "Tell me what you want." The pack waited. So did I, for half a second. Because the old fear in my blood knew what it meant when a Wells girl came out of the dark carrying a baby. Running had been our inheritance. Hiding had been our lullaby. I looked down at Caleb and Lydia Grace asleep in my arms, then back at the child shivering beneath the trees. "What's your name, baby?" I asked. Her chin wobbled. "Mara Wells." Eleanor made a sound behind me, sharp and wounded. The girl's eyes flicked toward her, then back to me. "My mama said if the black coats came, I had to find Alma Wells. She said you opened the door." My throat tightened. Behind Mara, in the shadow of the trees, headlights cut briefly across wet trunks. Not close. Not yet. Ethan's hand shifted, but still he waited. I stepped forward. "Then come in," Mara's face crumpled. She crossed the last stretch of grass, like her knees had been waiting for permission to fail. Grace reached her first, and took the baby before the child could drop him. Sophie wrapped Mara in her own shawl. Daniel's wolves moved without a word, forming a line between the woods and the courtyard. Ethan looked at me once. This time I nodded. Only then did he turn. The alpha rose in him so quietly, the night itself seemed to listen. No black coat crosses this ground. By dawn, they were kneeling in the mud with silver cuffs on their wrists and no law left to hide behind. Vale's name no longer protected them. The council that had dressed up theft as duty had been stripped bare in front of every pack that mattered. Jessica Woods' testimony had done that. So had the names in my mother's box. So had the children who stood in the council hall and told the truth with shaking voices. Mara's mother had not survived the road to us. That grief took time. But Mara did. So did her baby brother Noah. And when I carried them both into my kitchen that first morning, with Caleb against one shoulder and Lydia Grace fussing at my breast, I understood something I had not understood before. Sanctuary was not a miracle that happened once. It was work. It was clean sheets and hot soup. It was guards at the tree line. It was Grace making enough biscuits for 30 hungry mouths. It was Sophie teaching frightened children how to laugh again. It was Daniel standing watch until his eyes went red with exhaustion. It was Ethan stopping at the threshold every night and asking, "Can I come in?" And it was me learning that opening the door did not mean losing myself. Sometimes it meant finally standing in the house I had chosen. Years passed, not gently at first. Healing never moved in a straight line. There were nights I woke up reaching for my daughter before I remembered she was safe in the cradle beside my bed. There were mornings I looked at Eleanor and loved her so much it hurt, then remembered what she had hidden and had to step outside before anger made me say something I could not take back. She never rushed me. That helped. A year after the raid, I married Ethan under the oak behind our house. Not because the bond demanded it, not because the pack expected it, because I wanted to. He asked with Caleb asleep in his lap and Lydia Grace chewing on the corner of his shirt. He had mud on one boot and a scratch across his cheek from where our daughter had caught him with a tiny, furious fingernail. "I know I already have more than I deserve," he said, holding out a plain gold ring with hands that had once carried war and now knew how to fold laundry badly. "But if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life choosing you out loud." I looked at him for a long time. Then I said, "Ask again." His face fell for half a second before he understood. So he did. He asked on the porch at sunset. He asked in the nursery while both babies screamed. He asked one morning while I was elbow deep in biscuit dough, and he was trying to keep Lydia from climbing into the flour barrel. The third time, I kissed him quietly. "Yes, Ethan." He closed his eyes like the word had saved him. Maybe it had saved us both. 7 years later, Vanguard no longer looked like a pack recovering from war. It looked like a place children had claimed. There were muddy boots by every door, chalk drawings on the schoolhouse steps, swings hanging from 2 old maples, and a vegetable garden that never stood a chance once Lydia Grace discovered worms. The pack house was always noisy now. Human children, wolf children, Ironclaw children sent for summer lessons, Wells cousins who had come out of hiding one by one. Some suspicious, some starving, some carrying babies of their own. The old registry books had been burned. In their place, we kept a quilt. Every child who came to the sanctuary chose a square. Some stitched their names. Some only picked colors. Some left the fabric blank until they were ready to belong to anything again. The quilt hung in the schoolhouse where I taught reading, sums, history, and the important truth that no child was an asset, no matter what some powerful dick in a suit once wrote on paper. Caleb Wells Woods grew tall for his age and serious in the eyebrows, which was entirely Ethan's fault. He had his father's wolf. Everyone knew it. When he was angry, his eyes flashed gold before he remembered to breathe. When younger children cried, he put himself between them and the nearest door. At 7 years old, he already stood like a little alpha, which made Ethan proud and terrified in equal measure. Lydia Grace Wells Woods was another matter altogether. My daughter had my mother's name, my grandmother's stubbornness, Ethan's temper, and the Wells gift burning in her like banked fire. She could calm a crying baby with one hand on its blanket. She could make a room full of wolves lower their voices by walking into it. She also once bit an Ironclaw boy because he called Noah a stray. When I asked her why she had done it, she folded her arms and said, "Because Caleb told me not to hit him." "And biting seemed better?" She shrugged. He did not say not to bite. Ethan had turned toward the window. His shoulders shook. I pointed at him. "Do not laugh." "I'm not." "You are absolutely laughing." She found a loophole. She is 7. So was the loophole. That was our house most days. Love, noise, correction, laughter trying to hide behind discipline, and failing miserably. That afternoon, I found the twins in the yard behind the pack house, standing nose to nose in the mud, while a circle of children watched with the solemn fascination of people witnessing theater. Caleb's shirt was torn at the sleeve. Lydia's braids were full of leaves. Noah stood behind her, thin and sharp-eyed, holding a wooden sword like he planned to fight the whole world if she told him to. Mara, now 14 and already taller than Sophie, sat on the fence with her arms crossed. "I told them not to," she said, as soon as she saw me. "That sentence has never worked in this family," I replied. Lydia pointed at Caleb. "He thinks because he's alpha-born, he gets to decide everything." Caleb scowled. "I do not. You told me to stay back." "Because you were going to make the whole yard feel guilty again." I was not. 3 children behind her looked at the ground. Mara cleared her throat. "She was." Lydia whipped around. "You're supposed to be on my side." "I'm on the side of not making everyone cry during arithmetic." I pressed my lips together. Ethan came up beside me, smelling faintly of wood smoke and rain. He took in the torn shirt, the muddy knees, the guilty audience, and our daughter standing like a tiny queen prepared to wage war. "What happened?" he asked. Every child spoke at once. Ethan closed his eyes. I said, "One at a time, before your father starts praying for patience." "I don't pray for patience," Ethan murmured. "I negotiate with despair." Caleb stepped forward first. "Ironclaw boys said Vanguard only protects Wells children because Mama makes everyone soft." Lydia lifted her chin. "So I told them Mama could make grown wolves kneel without claws, and they should keep her name out their mouths." I looked at Ethan. His jaw flexed. Pride was a terrible thing when you were trying to parent properly. "And then?" I asked. Caleb kicked at the mud. "Then they said Noah didn't count as Wells because his mama died before she got here." Mara went still on the fence. Noah's fingers tightened around his sword. Lydia's face changed. Not into rage, into something older. The air softened around her, but not sweetly. It gathered with the weight of a storm deciding where to fall. "He counts," she said. Every wolf child in the yard lowered their eyes. Caleb looked at his sister then. Really looked. His anger drained out, leaving a little boy who had been scared for someone smaller. "I know he counts," he said quietly. "I just wanted to hit them before you did." Lydia sniffed. "I did not hit first." "No," Caleb said. "You shoved me first because I was in your way." "You were." I rubbed my forehead. Ethan crouched in front of them, mud and all. "Did either of you draw blood?" The twins exchanged a glance. "Not much," Lydia said. "Lydia Grace?" "No, sir." "Caleb?" "No, sir." Ethan nodded once. "Then you apologize to each other." "Then you apologize to Mara and Noah for making their pain into a battlefield. After that, both of you can help Grace scrub pots until supper." Lydia's mouth dropped open. But I was defending family. Ethan's expression remained grave. Family also eats from clean pots. Caleb sighed like he had carried the burdens of leadership for 80 years. "Yes, sir." Lydia muttered something under her breath. "What was that?" I asked. She looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "I said I love clean pots." She did not. Noah whispered. I bent to kiss the top of his head. I know, baby. By supper, the children were friends again, which meant they were united in outrage over chores. Grace supervised from the kitchen doorway with a wooden spoon in hand and no mercy in her heart. Scrub like you mean repentance, she told them. Lydia whispered to Caleb, What does repentance look like? Caleb whispered back, Probably bubbles. I left them there and stepped onto the porch. The evening spread gold over the fields. Beyond the garden, wolves moved between the trees on patrol, not because we were hunted anymore, but because safety was something worth tending. The schoolhouse windows glowed. Somewhere inside, Eleanor was telling the little ones a story. She told the truth now. Always. Even when it hurts. Especially then. Jessica Woods had lived long enough to testify in every hearing that mattered. She died 2 winters after the raid in a guarded house far from Vanguard. I went once before the end, not to forgive her, but to speak my mother's name where Jessica could hear it. Lydia Wells. My mother. Not a file, not a casualty, not a mistake buried under council ink. Jessica had listened. She had wept silently. She had not asked for what I could not give. That was enough. Ethan came out behind me. He did not ask if he could stand close anymore. Some permissions, once freely given and honored, became part of the body. His arm slid around my waist, careful and familiar. I leaned back against him. You smell like pond water, I said. Your daughter pushed me in. Our daughter. She said sanctuary fire works better near water. I laughed. And you believed her? She is very convincing. She is a menace. She is yours. She is also yours when she floods the pantry trying to rescue a frog. Ethan kissed the side of my neck, soft enough that my eyes closed. Years had changed him, not made him less serious. Ethan Woods would always look like he was personally responsible for holding up the sky, but there was ease in him now, a quiet place where fear used to live. He laughed more, slept deeper, let the children climb him like furniture, let me see when he was tired. We were not perfect. No real love was. We fought sometimes. We went quiet sometimes. There were nights when grief still walked through our house and sat at the foot of the bed. But the truth lived there too. So did the apology. So did the porch light he still turned on every evening, even though I had come home years ago. Are you happy? He asked. I looked through the kitchen window. Caleb was elbow deep in suds. Lydia had soap on her nose. Noah was laughing so hard he had folded over the bucket. Mara stood behind them, pretending not to smile. Eleanor rocked near the stove with a baby from Redfern asleep against her shoulder. Grace pointed her spoon at anyone foolish enough to splash. Sophie danced through the room with a stack of towels. Daniel stood in the doorway, shaking his head like he had not chosen every bit of this chaos and loved it. My children were loud. My house was full. My mother's name was spoken with honor. The Wells women were no longer a secret passed from one frightened hand to the next. I covered Ethan's hands with mine. Not every minute, I said honestly. But here? Yes. His breath warmed my curls. Here is good. Inside, Lydia shouted, Caleb started it. Caleb shouted back, You were born starting it. Ethan sighed. I smiled. Once a knock at the door had meant danger. Now it meant someone was hungry. Someone needed shelter. Someone had come home late and forgotten their key. It meant children running in and out without fear. It meant the life I had once dreamed of in quiet, careful pieces had become louder, messier, and better than anything I knew how to ask for. Night settled over Vanguard. The wolves kept watch, the children kept laughing. And when I opened the door to call them in for supper, no one ran from the dark. No one came to take us. We were already home.
In a world that tells us no, we keep on running.
that's burning so wild and free. I'll breathe you in just for tonight. Hold you close and feel the light. Even though the world won't understand, I'll keep you safe, I'll take your hand. In the silence, we'll defy the end. I'll breathe you in again and again. In the silence, we'll defy the end. I'll breathe you in again and again. The world can try to tear us apart, but they'll never reach our hearts. We hide away where no one can see the love that's burning so wild and free. I'll breathe you in just for tonight. Hold you close and feel the light. Even though the world won't understand, I'll keep you safe, I'll take your hand. In the silence, we'll defy the end. I'll breathe you in again and again. In the silence, we'll defy the end. I'll breathe you in again and again. Time may steal the moments we have, but in my heart you'll never be sad. I'll hold you close through all of the fear. Every breath, I'll keep you near. I'll breathe you in just for tonight. Hold you close and feel the light. Even though the world won't understand, I'll keep you safe, I'll take your hand. In the silence,